got one?
What is that?
Gavel.
You need tissue.
Oh.
I don't know. Okay. Sorry.
That's okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this first meeting in September 2021. We have not quite established a quorum. I know we have a few board members here that are not quite at the table yet, so we'll give them about another minute before we can move on to business, but we are excited to have community members here, and we'll engage in public participation shortly. All right, so we do have a quorum now. So we'll first begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Could I have our new student board members who were just sworn in moments ago, if you all wouldn't mind just standing and leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And you can stand where you are.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, again, thank you for being here. We will kick this off with board elections. So with that, I will entertain a motion for board chair. Mrs. Pupa-Walker?
Christian Buggs to be board chair for the 21-22 school year.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, it's been approved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, please raise your hand. All right, thank you. Unanimous with 2 missing. Thank you. All right, now I'll entertain a motion for board vice chair. Mrs. Player-Peters.
I make a motion to nominate Vice Chair Retran Elrod for Vice Chair.
All right, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Do I have any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Again, unanimous with 2 missing. Thank you. Now, we have some awards and recognitions. We'll begin with a Presidential Award for Excellence in Math and Science Teaching. Dr. Battle.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and congratulations. Madam Chair and Vice Chair. Well, good evening, everyone. We've got several awards and recognition to share tonight. First up is Natalie Boyd, a math teacher at Hume Falk Academic Magnet High School. Natalie is one of just 3 state finalists for the Presidential Awards for Excellence in Mathematics and Science and Teaching, the highest honors given by the U.S. government specifically for teaching K-12 science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and/or computer science. She also was the MNPS High School Teacher of the Year for 2019-2020 and is now in her 15th year of teaching and her 13th year with MNPS. Congratulations, Ms. Boyd, on a job extremely well done. And please come on up for a photo, and please bring your son with you. All right, congratulations again, Ms. Boyd. Next up, we will be honoring Lauren England, a third-grade teacher at Fall Hamilton Elementary School. Lauren was the elementary school finalist for all of Middle Tennessee for the State Teacher of the Year Award for the 2020-21 school year. She was also our MNPS Elementary School Teacher of the Year for 2019-2020. She is now in her 14th year of teaching and her 10th year with MNPS. Congratulations to you, Ms. England, on this great honor, and please join us up here for a quick photo. And I hear your Principal Portell, is here as well. I think I saw him come in. Why don't you come on up with her and anybody else joining you? Congratulations, Ms. England. And finally, we'll have a brief presentation from Mr. Trolka, a teacher at Johnson Alternative Learning Center, representing Camp's Nashville Foundation, an aria music class piano studio. Mr. Hanna, please come on up.
Good afternoon to everybody, to Dr. Battle, to the Board of Education, parents, teachers, guests. One, I want to just say thank you for giving me the platform to come here and speak. Over the summer, we were able to gather several students across from Nashville, most of them from MNPS. And what they decided to do was something that is a mantra at my school, which is Johnson Learning Center, which is they wanted to be inspiring. And through this inspiration, we came up with going to different establishments, going to different locations and playing music just to offer a sense of hope, just to offer a sense of, I want to say, release, and just to kind of get away, because music allows you to do that. It was through the support of MNPS that we found that without that anchor, this event would not have been able to go into fruition. We were able to provide school supplies to 300 students. We were able to feed the homeless of 100 persons. We were able to also provide practicum hours to college students, and then also bring together the community. And along with that, students built benches. They did artwork that went to the children's hospitals. They also provided, again, music into the community, where we went to the Centennial Park and actually did a huge event to just invite everybody. So we just wanted to find a way to say thank you to MNPS, because there were several schools, Glencliff, my school, Johnson, Pearl Cone, Glenview Elementary, and also, I'm missing one, Jerry Baxter Middle. So all of these schools stepped up to the plate and provided resources when they didn't have to. So we just wanted to say thank you, because we told them individually, but I think sometimes the community doesn't really see how much does the district really support the community. So we wanted to say thank you to Dr. Battle. We have here an award that we'd like to give to you. And this award says, for your unwavering support and outreach that helped in leading our path to success, you are being honored with much appreciation and gratitude. Your support helped participating 6th through 12th grade students receive volunteer hours from the Healing Through Music program. Thank you.
All right, thank you all so much. Now we will slide into the portion of our agenda where we allow for public participation, where members of our community can come up to address us. You will have 3 minutes. Once that 3 minutes is up, you will hear the sound. I also know that there are some in our midst who are not quite from Nashville, so we do invite you to eventually move to our city. But if you're here to speak to us today, we cannot wait to hear from all of you. With that, we'll begin with Robbie Starbuck. Mary French. Trina Mercer. Nicole Rowan. Fanny Sung Whalen.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board. My name is Fanny Sung Whelan. I am the parent of a first grader at Aiken Elementary, residing in board member Abigail Tyler's district. If my address is needed, I am happy to share that with the board in private after the meeting. I want to let you know I am continually impressed by the leadership you have displayed in the past year and a half. I cannot begin to imagine the difficulty of the position you have been placed in, trying to keep our community safe by mitigating COVID spread within our schools while listening to the anti-science minority be extremely loud in their messaging and contending with Governor Lee's executive order. This was an order that came last month mere hours after Lisa Piercy's announcement that the National Guard had been deployed to our state to offset the overwhelmed staffing issue that is faced in our state's healthcare facilities, which is ongoing crisis in our state now. I'm in awe of the strength and steadfastness you have all displayed. Thank you. Those of you who support the universal mask policy should know there are more of us in the community that support you than are against you. We are here to fight the good fight with you, to continue to stand up for science and ensure the safety of our kids, teachers, and school staff. Also, a special thanks to board member Emily Masters for bringing to the board the resolution to not punish teachers who choose a multicultural approach in educating our kids. As a minority mother raising minority children, I believe it is important for all students to learn in a way that is not hindered by political agendas, and for the teachers who make the choices in how they teach our kids to not be stifled by that agenda. Thank you to Ms. Masters for being an ally, and to the board for voting to pass the resolution. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Kelly Phillips.
Good evening. How are you all doing? Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak here tonight. My name is Kelly Phillips. I was here last month. My address should be on file from that meeting. I'm a mother of 3, one of which is in District 4 and high school. I could stand here tonight and speak about the science that we're supposed to follow. But on each side of the argument, whether you're for or against a mask, there are doctors, physicians on either side giving valid arguments. But it's just that, argument speculation. There are no peer-reviewed studies that can prove the efficacy of these masks. Before I go any further, I would like to check with Ms. Masters. She seems to be popular this evening. On the meeting y'all had on August 24th, you were presenting something to the board. I'm gonna just let you speak for yourself on this one.
Created by white supremacy culture.
Thank you for your participation, but we expect to hear from you,
Furthermore,
ma'am.
stand behind its adoption of curricular materials.
I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to say that she took off her mask because it was hard to read through it.
You can certainly speak. Thank you.
Okay, for anybody that wants to know, that's on YouTube. It's also on the MNPS website from the meeting on August 24th, where she could not read through her mask. You all are passing mandates that you yourselves cannot follow. Sitting in a chair in the air conditioning, you can laugh and shrug your shoulders. You did it. You are up there because of we the people. You were voted in. We the people can also vote you out. This is the Declaration of Independence. I suggest you all read it. Mandates are not laws. You have awoken a sleeping giant in parents that are protective over their children. We are not the silent minority as people think. We are a loudly growing majority. I will be announcing my candidacy here tonight for the 2022 school board. Parents will not be silenced. We have a right. As I said in my last speech here, it is a God-given right. It is not a Metro Nashville School Board given right. I suggest any of you that are for these mask mandates, try spending a day as an elementary school kid wearing a mask, standing outside at the bus stop, riding on a bus with no air conditioning in the heat. And as you promote on your social media website that they get to wear them during physical education, running around in a gym, and then ride it all the way home on the bus. Some of them are in them for up to 10 hours. So you can turn off my phone and not let me play it, but it's out there. People have seen it, and it's the most hypocritical thing I have ever seen. Shame on y'all. That's all I have. Like I said last time, no matter which side of this argument you're on, we all love our children, and that's why we're here. Some of us just have different arguments. I appreciate everything that all of you do because I know it's not an easy task. But you're up there to protect our children and serve in our best interest and their best interest. And if it means parents needing to stand up, then we will. I appreciate your time. Bless you all. Thank you very much.
Cheryl Gorney. And please let me remind everyone to keep your masks on even when you're at the podium. Thank you. Regina Helms-Smith. Pastor Kenneth Van Buren. Mary Klein Barnes. Fannie Whalen. Gregory O'Laughlin. Marthea Sides.
Hello, I'm Marthea Sideshaw, and I live in the Waverly Belmont District, and I'm a mother of two. I was told by MNPS in Tennessee was not approved for online learning this year by our governor. I was wondering where the money went since it was given to every state by the federal government. Most states are allowing virtual learning, and I just don't understand why Tennessee is any different. That was just, it's more of an observation, really. I just wanted to be able to send my children virtually if I didn't feel comfortable. So yeah, I understand that this is not a question for you, but rather for our government. Where is the money? That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Kelly Phillips. I'm so sorry. We said. All right, Keita Williams. Robin Polson. David Polson. Linda Robinson.
Good evening, Chair Buggs, Dr. Battle, and members of the board. My name is Linda Robinson. My home is in District 1, represented by Sharon Gentry. I'm here with the NOAA Education Task Force. We're here this evening to recognize and advance Black brilliance. Let me start by saying thanks and kudos to Dr. Battle and the entire MNPS School Board for your commitment to our children's well-being. Thank you for supporting and encouraging teachers as they teach the clear, straightforward, historical truth about all of us. You're successfully leading this district through extremely difficult times. We stand before you to increase awareness around the importance of ensuring racial equity. We're talking today about racial equity as it relates to increasing access to and successful completion of advanced academics opportunities for Black, brown, and other historically underserved communities. Many good things are happening in the advanced academics arena in MNPS, and we want to celebrate those. There's also many opportunities for improvement, as identified in the data presented at the Teaching and Learning Committee meeting on August 24th. Let's tell the whole story: the good, the bad, and the opportunities for improvement. For example, let's own the stark disproportionality of Black students in advanced academics opportunities this year. And then let's work on a plan to eliminate that disproportionality in multiple areas together. It's crucial that we identify real, meaningful, data-driven change. But why are we even talking about advanced academics in a conversation that begins with the words racial equity? Everything in the district should be looked at through an equity lens as documented in the equity roadmap. And that all-important core tenet, identify and eliminate inequities, is exactly where we begin this conversation. Research supports the fact that when students are exposed to rigorous, advanced academics curricula from an early age, the students display stronger interpersonal and attention skills, as well as higher level thinking, problem solving, and decision-making skills. Don't all of our children deserve to be assessed in a manner that identifies and recognizes their giftedness, regardless of their race, ethnicity, or zip code? Don't all of our children deserve access to an equitable number of advanced academics opportunities, regardless of their race, ethnicity, or zip code? I'm sure we all agree that the short answer here is yes. Finally, it's crucial that we resume the regular NOAA Education Task Force meetings with Dr. Battle and strategic members of her team. We're members of the community as well as representatives of NOAA's 62 member organizations. We are the community. NOAA has worked successfully in partnership with MNPS on multiple initiatives. We've done it before, let's do it again. NOAA must have a seat at the table to help shape policies and programs.
Thank you.
To ensure that we intentionally recognize, identify, develop, and support Black brilliance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Dwana Wade? Yes.
Good afternoon, board members and Dr. Battle. Thank you all for all you've done and all you continue to do in the best interest of our children. I reside in District 4, represented by John Little. I'm Dwana Wade, and I am here in support of NOAA's Academics Committee, and I serve on the Social Emotional Learning Committee of NOAA's Education Task Force. We are here to recognize and advance Black brilliance. It's clear that there are and have been egregious racial disparities in school discipline, with Black and brown students being overrepresented in punitive discipline consequences in MNPS. Those same egregious racial disparities are evident in academics, as Black and brown students are underrepresented in gifted and talented programming in MNPS. There's certainly some connection between these two issues, and each of these committees of the Education Task Force are committed to addressing and eliminating these disparities. In the past, there has been some intentional, meaningful engagement between NOAA and MNPS around these issues, and there have been some positive outcomes in both arenas under both Dr. Joseph and now Dr. Battle's leadership. Unfortunately, there are also challenges in that partnership, and that engagement has ultimately been cut off by MNPS since the Metro budget season. Partnership does not and should not suggest never-ending agreement on all issues and tactics, but it does require, honest, transparent communication. Even in light of this dearth of recent engagement with MNPS, our fight continues in bringing these issues of these racial disparities within the district to the Nashville public. The expectation is that MNPS comes back to the table and engages regularly and in good faith with NOAA. And, because two things can be true at the same time, we're asking MNPS to provide ongoing, up-to-date, aggregated data regarding these racial disparities in academics and discipline on the public MNPS open data site.
NOAA must have a seat at the table to help shape policies and programs that ensure that we stop ignoring and crushing Black brilliance. Thank you.
Thank you. Pat McDonald.
Good evening, Dr. Battle and board members. My name is Dr. Pat McDonald. I live at 414 Fieldcrest Drive in Rachel Elrod's district. I am here with the NOAA Education Task Force. We are here to recognize and advance Black brilliance. I worked for MNPS for many years. I was a school psychologist and I was coordinator of program evaluation in the research department under Dr. Paul Changus. I've been concerned about how we identify minority gifted students for many years, and I can speak both about the data that supports the underrepresentation of minority students in MNPS programs aimed at gifted and talented students, and from personal experience. I'm going to focus on the latter. I had a front row seat as a school psychologist. So I'm going to tell you 3 stories about 3 Black boys. Story number 1. A little boy who was in 1st or 2nd grade at an elementary school that I served was referred to me because of behavior problems. Both his teacher and his principal were concerned about these problems. When I observed him in the classroom, I noticed that he was really quite bright. I took the evaluation on. I was ready. My evaluation concluded that he was intellectually gifted. They had referred the right child, but for the wrong reasons. Story number 2. I was in a classroom observation observing a 5th grade student that the teacher had referred as possibly gifted. While I was observing that boy, I often observed the other children to get comparisons. I could not help but notice another boy. Boy number 1 seemed like a good, strong, white student. Boy number 2, a Black student, demonstrated to me more characteristics of a gifted child. I asked the teacher about boy number 2. She said he was a behavioral challenge. At my insistence, I evaluated both. Boy number 2 tested in the gifted range. Boy number 1 was just a good, strong, white student. I was lucky enough to connect again with boy number 2 in high school. I had a great conversation with him because he was fun to talk to. And I talked to his teachers. He was still in all advanced classes. Why was he in all advanced classes? Because he wasn't a total A student. He was in all advanced classes because he had been certified as gifted. Somebody else had also taken the trouble of referring him to the, thank you.
Thank you. And please, if I have not said it already, if your 3 minutes is up before you've been able to finish your comments, please feel free to either come back to a future board meeting to speak with us or reach out to us via email or phone. So really, thank you for being here. Paula Pendergrass, Dr. Pendergrass.
Thank you, Madam Chair, board members, and Dr. Battle for giving me the opportunity to share my experience with MNPS Gifted Program, known by many as Encore. My name is Dr. Paula Pendergrass, and although I am the current Vice President of MEA, today I am speaking as an MNPS parent. All 3 of my children, Savon, Keegan, and Lawson, were part of MNPS Gifted Talented Program. In fact, Lawson is a current 6th grader at Meigs Magnet School. I would like to take this time to give just a quick snapshot of my oldest son, Savon's academic journey. Savon began his foundation at Granbury Elementary. He was identified as an advanced learner based upon his excellent work ethics, both as an academic student and as an elite soccer player. He was chosen to take the COGAT twice, but never achieved the desired score to access gifted services. Consequently, he had given up on the chance of being enrolled in the gifted program. As opportunities within MNPS began to come my way, I found myself accepting a teaching position as a gifted educator. This required me to take the Tennessee Gifted Employment Standards at Vanderbilt University. Dr. Dwana Wade, one of my professors, advised me to keep advocating for Savon. She told me to ask for a one-to-one testing environment for Savon during his next COGAT test. As a result, he scored higher than he had ever scored before and met the criteria to receive gifted services. I was fortunate as an MNPS teacher to be at the right place at the right time and to learn how to advocate for Savon. I recognize that many of our underrepresented parents may not have this privilege and/or a Dr. Ford as an advocate. Does advanced academics really matter? I would answer yes. The Gifted program and its educators help Savon to develop the confidence and resilience to take advanced placement courses in high school, apply and get accepted at a Division I university, Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas. Dr. Battle, I truly appreciate the work that you, the 70-plus gifted teachers, my colleagues, Dr. Smallwood, the gifted coordinator, and Dr. Herlon, the gifted facilitator, are doing to increase the number of Black and brown students in our district. I encourage you to remember Savon's story as you continue to make important decisions about MNPS gifted program, making sure that all parents have the necessary information that they need to advocate for their children. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Reverend Troy Merritt.
Good evening to our chair, to our board members, and our director, Dr. Battle. I'm a citizen. I'm part of District 7, 37208 zip code. And I'm here with Noah tonight to recognize and advance Black brilliance. In other words, the recognition of talented minority and poor children. In high school, all students need access to multiple early post-secondary opportunities to prepare them for college and careers. For example, students who take advanced placement courses are more likely to get into and to go on to college from students who do not. Talent is equally distributed, but access to opportunity is not. Keep that in mind. Currently, students' access to early post-secondary opportunities depend on their zip code. Going to school in 37208, 37216, or 37189 should not limit your academic opportunities. But the 5 high schools that are overwhelmingly Black in these zip codes have among the fewest early post-secondary opportunities. For example, only 1 to 6 advanced placement courses are offered. Some schools in the district, such as Hillwood and Belmead, offer over 20 advanced placement courses. Principals, teachers, and other trusted adults in our schools must believe that all of our young people can succeed in order for the young people to know that they can succeed. When a young person is deprived of adults who recognize their gifts and talents, it can be very hard for those students to have assurance in themselves. And when the advanced academic opportunities are not available in the school building, poor academic performance becomes self-fulfilling prophecy. We need all teachers and adults in our schools to equitably value Black and brown children as gifted and to establish and maintain high expectations, then provide the resources to prepare and support our children at all levels. Young people will rise to the occasion. There must be an expectation of excellence. We are asking that you recognize that on the average, there are 9 courses available, and we would ask that there would at least be 9 offered at every high school.
Thank you.
Let us have a seat at the table, and let us meet with you and work together for our
Thank you,
children.
Reverend Merritt. Lorraine Stalwart.
Good evening, Board Chair, Board members, and Dr. Battle. Since retiring from the district in 2019 as the coordinator for restorative practices, I returned to the school I began at, Pearl Cone High School. Once a Firebird, always a Firebird. I am here supporting the work of NOAA's Advanced Academic Committee in their push to see equitable distribution of AP courses for all students in MNPS. After returning to Pearl Cone, I was shocked to learn there were so few AP courses offered to students. You see, I see Black brilliance every day that I'm there, often untapped brilliance. But why are there less offerings in Pearl Cone than other schools? Is there a feeling that the students can't handle the rigor? Do we doubt the students' ability? Well, we shouldn't. I've been around Pearl Cone long enough to know that it has graduated students who have gone on to become doctors, principals, teachers, IT professionals, engineers, nurse practitioners, and the like. How many stories from Black CEOs around the country have we heard where their potential for greatness was ignored when they were in school? Dr. Harrington, the executive principal, is committed to breeding excellence into the building. She has added a healthcare academy to the school, recognizing the wealth of healthcare opportunities in the neighborhood for her students. Because of Dr. Battle's partnership with Nashville State, dual enrollment courses supporting the Healthcare Academy are also part of the curriculum, but few AP courses, creating a dearth in well-rounded kinds of students. In lieu of sanctioned AP courses in her building, Dr. Harrington moves her honors students, into an advanced placement curriculum. Exposure, opportunity, rigor breeds success and must be woven into all students. We have been charged as educators to grow our students no matter the zip code. I support NOAA's commitment to working with MNPS to ensure all students are provided the opportunity to flourish in an environment that supports their brilliance. Thank you.
Thank you. Billy Sanders.
Good evening. My name is Billy Sanders. I live in District 1, zip code 37209. I'm an attorney, and I have 3 adult children who attended Metro Public Schools. I'm a member of the NOAA Education Task Force, and I'm here to advance Black brilliance. Sadly, in 2019, only 25% of AP exams taken by Black students received a passing score, compared to 51% of AP exams taken by white students. These low pass rates indicate that adequate support is not in place to promote success in AP courses at some schools, especially for students who have not had preparatory courses or participated in Encore. But this problem is not new. My daughter, Grace, is a graduate of Hume-Fogg High School, Spelman College, and earned a PhD at the University of Michigan. She's now a professor at the University of Pennsylvania. At Hume-Fogg, she took 3 AP courses, history, English, and calculus. She passed the AP exams for history and English, but failed the AP exam for calculus, despite the fact that she made an A in the course. She got an A on her high school transcript, but she did not receive college credit. Grace loved calculus. She understood it, and she learned a lot, but she was not a good standardized test taker. She recommends that halfway through the course, the teacher should teach test-taking strategies. However, she cautions against teaching, merely teaching to the test, because when this is done, students often have not learned the concepts. She also said that her class was too large. The teacher offered because it was so large, there was no one-on-one help, and no tutoring was available. Also, we need guidance counselors in all schools who are knowledgeable about college standards and who encourage Black students to excel. Too many Black children hear from counselors that they are not college material. Teachers and counselors often give information about AP courses, scholarships, and other advanced academic opportunities only to the select few whom they deem worthy and do not make these opportunities known to all students and parents. I suspect that you want to improve these pass rates as well. And NOAA wants to work with the school district to eliminate inequities and increase AP pass rates for all racial groups to above 50%. And we specifically, respectfully request that the administration resume regular meetings with us so that we can help to shape policies and programs to ensure that we do not stifle Black brilliance.
Thank you. Dr. Bethany Riddle Johnson.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Battle. My name is Bethany Riddle Johnson, and I live on Lone Oak Road in Ginny Poo Poo Walker's district. I am an MNPS parent, and I am here with the NOAA's Education Task Force. And first, I want to express my deep gratitude to Dr. Battle, the school board, your leaders, for their efforts to keep our children safe at school by passing and sticking with a strong masking policy. Your universal masking policy is reducing illness and supporting more in-person learning. Thank you. I am also here with NOAA's Education Task Force to recognize and advance Black brilliance. I want to share how I, as a white parent, learned about advanced academics in the district. I did not hear about it from the district. I can't think of an instance of MNPS or my children's schools or teachers sharing with me that I could request that my child be tested for giftedness. Rather, I learned about it through a network among other parents. Other white parents told me to have my child assessed for giftedness when they were in preschool, so they could go to Robertson Academy one day a week during preschool and enter kindergarten already identified for Encore. They told me that if the district did the assessment, the person wouldn't give time to allow my child to feel comfortable with the assessor, and she might not do as well on the test. Rather, they said it was better for me to have my child assessed privately to increase her chances of qualifying. And as a first-time parent, that's what I did. This person came to our house on 2 occasions and spent several hours assessing her and writing a report. And this report was key to identifying our daughter as gifted by age 4. For our second child, we had her assessed by MNPS for giftedness at age 3, and both of our girls were enrolled in Encore beginning in preschool and throughout elementary and middle school. And that success and that identification set them up in high school to be well prepared for advanced placement courses. Over the years, both of our daughters have chosen from among 26 different AP courses that are offered at MLK, allowing them to gain college-level preparation in a variety of areas. They were flagged, and so they were always encouraged to sign up for AP courses, sought out if they didn't, and then provided with the supports they needed to succeed. But many students do not get this type of early identification, encouragement, or support. How to access advanced academics cannot remain this informal knowledge that parents, privileged, educated parents, pass amongst themselves. Rather, MNPS must communicate regularly with parents regarding all advanced academic offerings, their benefits, qualifications, who to contact about enrollment, actions they can take. And finally, NOAA must have a seat at the table to help shape policies and programs to ensure that we support Black brilliance.
Thank you. Lynn Hoyt.
Good evening, Chair, Dr. Battle, members of the board. My name is Lynn Hoyt. I live in District 9. My child attends school in District 5. I'm here as part of NOAA Education Task Force, and we're here to recognize and advance Black brilliance. I know we all believe that every child has a right to rigorous, high-quality education, an education that prepares all learners, regardless of race or ethnicity, for successful graduation and college, career, and life pathways. But I, too, have a similar story of gifted education access. My pediatrician suggested that my oldest child get tested while he was in preschool in order to access the great gifted services offered by MNPS. And as a network of mostly white parents, they also encourage private testing to better ensure he tested in. Families should not have to have insider access to know how to qualify for advanced academics and enrichment. The truth is, I used my privilege to get my kids access. We bring this to your attention as it aligns to the excellent resolution regarding multicultural education. Identifying Black students for gifted programming is also an every student known thing. Thank you for the multicultural resolution. Navigators, your investment in SEL, care centers, nurses, and restorative coaches. It's about healthy, safe relationships and trust. This is the ground floor to learning, even if it means carving official space in government systems to commit to what we know is best for kids. So let's keep carving. We would love to know more about a concrete plan for identifying and eliminating inequities in advanced academics. We think a powerful and meaningful action plan should include the following steps. Develop clear goals for remedying racial inequities in advanced academics, accompanied by specific policies, practices, and procedures to reach those goals. Communicate this plan to schools, parents, and the public at large. What if every pediatrician and pre-K in this city helped start identifying and processing gifted education? Finally, we need to resume the No Education Task Force regular meetings to shape this planning and action. The No Education Task Force should be able to meet regularly with Dr. Battle and/or her chiefs so that we may contribute to the ongoing discussion and planning and represent our community. We all want to make sure MNPS continues to improve the education and access to resources for all of our children. This access must include Black excellence. I also want to thank you for the commitment to our children's safety. Thank you for the mask mandate. You are leading a district through difficult times, and I want to acknowledge that. I appreciate your leadership. I pray for your strength. And in closing, we would like to invite you all and Dr. Battle to NOAA's public meeting on October 17th at 3 p.m. It will be held online. Look for more information soon. Thank you again.
Thank you. Melissa Calvert. Chaz Calvert. Dr. Elizabeth Self.
Good evening, Chairperson Buggs, to the school board, and to Dr. Battle. Thank you for having me. My name is Liz Self. I live on Stonewall Drive, and I'm in District 8, I'm pretty sure. I'm a former high school English teacher. I'm a current teacher educator at a local teacher education program, and I'm the mother of 3 Metro school students, a brilliant Black child who is here with me this evening. And I'm proud to have taught and worked with Metro teachers for the last 10 plus years, including a number in this room. While this is the first school board meeting I've attended in person, I've watched the last several through the live stream and also thanks to Megan's Twitter feed. And what I listened to at home is part of what led me to attend tonight. In short, I'm here today to thank the board for the many thoughtful decisions it has made of late, mandating masks for students, faculty, and staff, encouraging teachers to get vaccinated and providing paid time off for those who nonetheless test positive, and affirming the humanity of all persons in the district, not regardless of, but in acknowledgement of their race, ethnicity, gender, and sexuality. And I'm here to ask that the board continue to make such thoughtful decisions, knowing that these are rooted not just in good judgment, but also good evidence. So I want to be one in what I know is a chorus of voices that is perhaps not making itself heard. Please stay the course. Having been a teacher and now spending my days trying to prepare teachers to enter the classroom, I will be the first to tell you there is a lot about teaching that we don't know. There are lots of questions that we don't have good answers to, and there are a lot of issues on which reasonable people can disagree. But the topics that have been in focus as of late are not these. Here are things we have good evidence for, and I am more than happy to provide the peer-reviewed research that backs this up. We know that masks and vaccines are both effective in slowing the spread of COVID, and if there are doctors out there, my physician husband would like to have a word with them while he watches people die at the hospital every day. We know that male seahorses do gestate and that Ruby Bridges did experience racism in school, as many still do today at the hands of the system and other students. We know that the presence of school resource officers and strictly enforced dress code policies make spaces less safe for Black children. We know that denying someone's gender or sexuality has serious psychological effects for those who are not permitted to be fully present in their school or classroom and negatively affects things like attendance, academic academic achievement and general well-being and mental health. We know that feelings of guilt and shame are not unusual in stages of white racial identity development. I have had many such conversations with my own white children. So while I love the level of public engagement that has been present at many of the recent meetings, I'm disappointed to see so much energy focused on these issues. Just because you haven't read the evidence doesn't mean it's not there. So we can two sides it all day. When my kids asked me this morning what I was going to say here tonight, and I told them, my very 13-year-old seventh grader said, "But isn't that just your opinion?" And he's right, but he's also making my point for me. I hope that the board continues in the direction it has been headed, not because it overlaps with my personal opinion, but because it is rooted in good evidence. Thank you.
Thank you. Jared Gray. Shanice Tennell. Janie Easley. Tamara Slappuck. Scott Dillon. Jesse Sutton. Shane Utley. Sarah Pascal. Elizabeth Hines.
Good evening, board chair, board members, and Dr. Battle. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Elizabeth Hines, and I'm the PAC chair. My address is on the sign-in sheet. So I want to give you a quick update. So the PAC now has a website. We are on Twitter. We are on Facebook. We are here, Bethany, Tanya Hancock, myself, of course, Emily Masters. We just had our first district PAC meeting. At some point, there were about 200 people on the call. We got lots of questions. Our secretary, Don Johnson, is currently scrubbing through the questions so we can get the questions over to Dr. Changis so he can answer it, so we can get answers to our parents. I don't know how you guys do it with 86,000 people. We had the By Design documentary viewing on September 11th with PAC officers. Just this morning, we had a meeting with the library, and they're going to allow us to use their libraries to do these viewings. There are going to be 8 of them all together. All this stuff is on the website, so please go to our website. We have a town hall meeting coming up on September 28th at 4 p.m. It's in person. We're going to look into having some virtual town halls, but for now, it's going to be in person. I'm sure Emily Masters will talk about it more during her report time. At these town halls, we're going to be addressing all the issues that everyone who's come to the podium has talked about. And we want to encourage people to join the PAC. And I'll say my own personal story. I don't network very well. I don't socialize well. I stand against the wall. I don't talk to anybody. So I'm not going to learn about how to get your kid tested in preschool or how to talk to your pediatrician from being around other people, because I just don't talk to people that I don't know. So I think the suggestion of posting these things on the website is really important so that people like myself who don't know anyone, especially if you're new to town, you can get that information online. But if you do join the PAC and you're around other parents, you will hear these similar stories. You'll learn from other parents. I have parents I go to when I have questions, and I've learned a whole lot from them, and it was because I joined the PAC. So I'm going to recommend that if you're new in town, old in town, interested, please join the PAC. Our email is mnpspac@gmail.com. Like I said, however many months ago, I'm here. I'm here till May 2020. I hope to contribute to this group. And I really do appreciate what you're doing, Dr. Battle, and the rest of the board, but especially Dr. Battle, because you have a lot of people who are standing, some hiding behind you, some standing next to you, but us parents in the PAC, we definitely support what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Vale. Stacy Simplican. Dwana Wade. Suzanne Thompson.
Good evening to the chair and the members of the board. My name is Suzanne Thompson, and I live in Antioch. I'm here to discuss the second grade curriculum and its overemphasis on injustice. Students spend 9 weeks concentrating on injustice, and the teacher's manual mentions injustice 314 times in a book that's 478 pages long. What's missing is the emphasis on civil rights heroes. That's what we need. Children are told to develop a nonverbal signal for injustice, and throughout the 9-week period, they are encouraged to use that nonverbal signal every time they perceive an example of injustice. So you are training them to look for a lot of negative stuff. Other lessons on prefixes focus on injustice, unequal, inequality, unfair. Vocabulary lesson, protest, refuse, and marching. Day 5, what makes a good protest song? These are 7- and 8-year-olds. All I'm going to talk about is the emphasis on the negative in this curriculum. And I have some quotes from an article called Greater Good, published by, or published through, I should say, UC at Berkeley. It says, we humans have a propensity to give more weight in our minds to things that go wrong than things that go right. So much so that just one negative event can hijack our minds in ways that can be detrimental to our work, relationships, health, and unhappiness. It asks, is negative thinking bad for your brain? Researchers at King's College London found that a habit of prolonged negative thinking diminishes your brain's ability to think, reason, and form memories, essentially draining your brain's resources. Remember, it says, brains get good at what they do. Negative thoughts create channels in our brains. We're talking about 8-year-old, very young, impressionable brains. This way of thinking can become your default thinking. If you do a lot of negative thinking, you wire your brain to be good at producing negative thoughts. Your brain also gets good at seeing things to think negatively about. Some of the examples on day 1, there are at least 9 instances where the teachers who are required to follow this manual strictly discuss injustice. What injustices did people face before the Civil Rights Act of 1964? These are 8-year-olds. This is day 1. I know Title VII. I've been in human resources for 35 years, and I'm a minority. And I see life getting better, not worse. And maybe if you implement some of the ideas they have here from NOAA, which I'm new to Tennessee, and the AP courses, those are positive. This curriculum is negative. Teacher, the manual asks, what might a just world be? It assumes the world is only unjust, and it's not. Thank you.
Thank you. Kosarko Assad.
Good evening, Chair Buggs, Dr. Battle, members of the board. My name is Kosarko Assad, and I live in District 7. I'm a lifelong Nashville resident, an MNPS graduate of Hume-Fogg High School, and a representative of Safer Schools Nashville, a grassroots organization composed of MNPS graduates working towards safer alternatives to school policing and punitive discipline. I'm here today to talk about security and safety in our public schools. There was a story recently that an elementary school student had accidentally brought a gun to school. While this has been distressing to hear, it is important that we are not reactionary and punitive in our response to this. The solution to incidents like this is not to advocate for more SROs in schools, let alone in elementary schools. Currently, there are no SROs in elementary schools, and we should keep it that way. Research has found that the presence of SROs in schools increases the chances of students getting referred to law enforcement. It wasn't that long ago that an elementary school student in MNPS could be arrested. There have been instances in the past of elementary school students being detained by SROs. Further studies have shown that the very act of being arrested at an early age, rather than the student's own social and psychological factors before the arrest, could significantly derail the educational trajectories of students. Davidson County has one of the highest student arrest rates, specifically Black student arrests, in our state, according to data from the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights. Furthermore, Black and Hispanic students and students with disabilities are disproportionately arrested than their white counterparts. In addition to school policing, our schools have relied on harsh disciplinary measures that have racial biases. For example, 3 times as many African-American children were suspended as white children in the 2019-2020 school year, making up 58% of in-school suspensions, 65% of out-of-school suspensions, and almost 75% of expulsions. Minorities as a whole make up almost 90% of referrals to law enforcement, and students with disabilities make up a stunning 97% of referrals to law enforcement in MNPS. Black students in MNPS represent 77% of students referred to law enforcement, despite only being 40% of the population. Just these statistics alone should raise the alarms. While I don't want to minimize the dangers of gun violence and school shootings, since it is an epidemic in this country, the response should not be more police and security, more policing in schools. Data has shown otherwise, that SROs are successful in intervening in instances of gun violence, with only a 1.5 success rate of the 197 instances of gun violence in schools since 1999. Instead, MNPS and Metro Council should allocate roughly the $9 million for SROs and actually invest in social and emotional learning, restorative justice initiatives, and the necessary professional staff and mental health services for our students. This rhetoric of more school policing to spark widespread outrage, not students wearing masks in schools. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Colleen Davis.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board. My name is Colleen Davis, and my address is 37211 zip code of Nashville. I'm going to talk about the book Woods Runner, which is by Gary Paulson, and it's part of the Wit and Wisdom curriculum for 4th grade. 4th graders are usually 9 to 10 years old. Common Sense Media recommends this book for ages 12 and up. While this book might be great in 6th grade, our concern with this book is it's very graphic for 4th graders. Here's a brief summary of the book. 13-year-old Samuel lives with his parents on the edge of the wilderness in the British colony of Pennsylvania. Samuel knows how to hunt and how to survive in the untamed forest where it can take days for news to arrive. There are rumors that American patriots have begun a bloody war against the English. Then the war comes to him. In a savage attack by British soldiers and Iroquois, Samuel's parents are taken prisoner. Samuel follows their trail, determined to find a way to rescue them. Each day he confronts the enemy and the unbelievable cruelty, tragedy, and horror of the war. But he also discovers unexpected allies, men and women working secretly on behalf of the patriots. And he learns that he must plunge deep into enemy territory to find his parents. Chapter 1. 1. A man mauled to death by a bear that had attacked his horse while the man was plowing. The man's head was eaten, another killed by an arrow through the throat. An arrow Samuel knew that came out of the woods from a bow that was never seen, shot by a man who was never known. Live long enough, be slow enough, get old enough and something eats you. Everything kills. Before the buck heard the sound of the rifle, the ball would pass through the heart and out the other side of the deer, killing it. Chapter 3. Whole ranks of attacking men could be torn to pieces in a single shot, the musket ball passing through man after man, ripping them apart. So again, I just wanted to summarize that, we're just asking that the consideration would be made that this would be for ages 12 and up, maybe 6th grade versus, we just feel like it's too graphic for 4th graders. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Carolyn Lutz.
Evening. My name is Carolyn Lutz. I live in Old Hickory, Tennessee. I first of all want to say that I do agree with the NOAA group, with a lot of schools in Metro. I was able to have my first daughter be a part of Encore, and I was not able to get my son to be a part of Encore. I tried, and they just ignored us. So it happens all the time, but I totally agree that there needs to be more of those kind of classes in all the schools. I wanted to say that first. So I'm going to talk about the unpopular topic in everybody's, in all of school right now. I'm going to talk about masks. And I really, really urge all of you, please do your own homework. As we know, there's a lot of science out there, but there's a lot of science. There's a lot of different studies and doctors, and I have to say the CDC is not always correct. Out of more than 600 American deaths attributed to COVID-19, 361 were for kids and adolescents under the age of 18. In the much shorter 2018-2019 flu season, there were 477 pediatric deaths. We didn't have mask mandates then. Common argument right now is that the emergency of the Delta variant changes everything. Currently, some regions of the U.S. are seeing a surge of infections and hospitalizations among young people. But the numbers coming out of Britain continue to suggest that Delta does not cause more severe illness on an individual basis to unvaccinated people or children. Despite being more contagious, pediatric immunologist at a major university hospital said it is not biologically plausible, but that the same variant somehow is more dangerous for kids in the U.S. than it is in the U.K. There was a study, a newly released study suggests that kids may be harmed by wearing face masks intended to combat the spread of COVID-19. According to the study, the dead space in the mask collects exhaled carbon dioxide quickly, and that carbon dioxide mixed with the oxygen increases the amount inhaled under the mask. The author of this study cite another paper. Bummer.
Goddard. Cindy Goddard.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board. My name is Cindy Goddard, and I'm in District 4, John Little's district. I'm going to continue reading some of the graphic quotes from the book, Woods Runner, that a 9-year-old child might find disturbing. Not just the smoke from the fires, but the thick, heavy smell, blood, death. He knew the smell came from someone. He could not allow himself to believe it was from them, from mother and father. But as the search loop widened, he began to come across bodies. His neighbors shot down and hacked where they'd fallen. Most had been mutilated so badly it was hard to tell who they had once been. Chest and stomach filled with arrows. His scalp gone, so his face drooped without the top skin to hold it up. There were 9 bodies to be buried before the coyotes, wolves, and bears came. 3 were children. He cried over each corpse, thinking of them living. In Chapter 5, these are quotes. He saw where Overton and others had fallen, saw the blood, now covered with flies, where they had been hacked to the ground with tomahawks. He could imagine the terror of the people in the settlement, the war cries of the attackers, mixed with the screams of the victims and the smell of blood and fear and death. The last of the cabins were burned. The surviving victims, probably neck-tied to each other with a rope, lined up and pulled along the trail. All the victims he'd buried had been chopped down with either tomahawks or war clubs, and the attackers had taken the time to stop and slaughter the people who lived there. Chapter 6, ignored and allowed to die alone. Settle your affairs and make out a proper will, because the riflemen will almost certainly kill you. Their prints were scuffed, ragged, and he felt his mother's anguish terribly. She was small and thin and was very strong in her own way, but this brutal treatment, probably with a rope around her neck, might be too much for her. He found the first body. He had been scalped, mutilated. One more body. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jennifer Condor.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board. My name is Jennifer Condor, 908 Steeplechase Drive, and I'm going to continue some more disturbing quotes from the book Woods Runner, being read by 9-year-olds in Davidson County. Chapter 7, both of the men had fresh scalps hanging on the shafts they carried. For the first time in his life, Samuel wanted to kill a man. The overwhelming rage that he had begun to feel while following his mother's small footprints as she'd been savagely jerked along the trail was like a hot knife in his brain. Chapter 8, one Indian leveled his musket and fired. Samuel felt the ball graze his cheek. He felt the rifle buck, saw the small hole appear in the Indian's chest. He watched the Indian fall as he saw the other Indian swing a tomahawk. The tomahawk was coming at his head, and he tried to duck, but the white-hot pain exploded as the side of the tomahawk smashed into his forehead. Chapter 9, untreated battle injuries often led to gangrene, which causes the body to literally rot away, turning first green, then black from infection that travels rapidly. Because antibiotics were unavailable in the 18th century, amputation was the usual treatment. If the patient was not lucky enough to benefit from amputation, maggots would be introduced into the wound in an attempt to aid healing. They would eat away the infection. Letting the patient die was often the only option at the time. One of them put a musket ball in Paul. We knew he was going to die. He died screaming. It was bad. Chapter 11, he and Ma were immediately gunned down. The 4 soldiers jumped to the porch and bayoneted them. They took the bodies of Caleb and Ma and dragged them back into the house. Samuel was sickened by the cruelty, the absolute viciousness of the attack, and he hunched over and retched. Chapter 12, he wanted to punish them and could think of nothing to do except act as violent as they had, kill someone, find someone in a red coat and shoot him. Chapter 17, over 10,000 prisoners died of intentional neglect, starvation, and untreated disease. Their bodies were tossed overboard into the harbor or buried in shallow graves. Samuel hit the guard with a brick, hard. Chapter 19, Samuel gutted him quickly and left the entrails for scavengers. Samuel pulled the trigger on his rifle, aiming up at the officer, the ball taking the man just beneath the chin, killing him instantly. The men on the horses were blown off their mounts, dead by rebel fire. 2 horses were hit, screaming, staggering back into the brush. The rebels reloaded and killed the wounded horses. Thank you.
Thank you. Amity Marsh.
Good evening, Chairwoman Buggs and members of the board. My name is Amity Marsh, and I reside in District 2. Here are some additional excerpts from the Woods Runner that's being used in 4th grade. The epilogue. He stayed until Coop died, streaming with dysentery over a slit trench in an agony of jabbering delirium, killed by dehydration, beheaded in guillotines. Afterward, there is a tendency to clean up the tales of war to make them more palatable, focusing on rousing stories of heroism and stirring examples of patriotism, all clean, pristine, and aseptic. But the simple fact is that all combat is outrageous. Thousands and thousands of young soldiers die horrible, painful deaths, lying in their own filth, alone and far from home, weak and hallucinating, forgotten and lost. The Revolutionary War lasted for 8 long slaughtering years. Approximately 4,000 young men were killed in combat by musket ball, exploding artillery, grape shot from a cannon, and a steel bayonet shoved through their bodies. There is no doubt the Revolutionary War was horrific, but as you've heard, some of this book is too advanced for a 9-year-old learning about war, probably for the first time. We would like to have this book either moved to an age-appropriate grade level or replaced with something more reasonable for children of this age. We'd like to point out that Woods Runner was removed in Williamson County and replaced with 2 primary source documents. King George's Proclamation and Rebellious Colonies, and the Declaration of Independence. Excerpts from both will be used. Other books we shared last month from the Wit and Wisdom curriculum have also been pulled in Williamson County. Amos and Boris for 3rd grade was pulled and will be replaced with The Snail and the Whale. Shark Attack for 3rd grade will be replaced with Shark Lady and Language of Dolphins and Other Sea Animals. Love That Dog for 4th grade was pulled and will be replaced with Little Dog. And Thunder Rolling in the Mountains for 5th grade was pulled and will be replaced by Island of the Blue Dolphins. We applaud the removal of these books in Williamson County and ask you to do the same for the students in Davidson County. We appreciate your time listening to the excerpts from the book tonight as well as from the books last month. We hope you will see the need to replace these books as well, since we all want what's best for our children. Moms for Liberty has logged over 1,200 hours researching every single book in the Wit and Wisdom curriculum, and our suggestions for removing certain books are based on these findings. We would be more than happy to provide you all with a compilation of our research so you can better understand our concerns. Thank you for your time.
Excuse me, thank you. Michelle Whitby.
Good evening, Chair and school board members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. My name is Michelle Whitby. I am not a citizen of Davidson County. I'm actually from Williamson County, but I am a citizen of Tennessee. I'm here tonight to bring some attention to an email that was actually sent to you today. The email contains information on a COVID solution that I believe is what we've all been searching for to protect our children, our staff, and our buildings. It is my firm belief that together we must work with each other to overcome obstacles that this new world is creating. This device that you read about in your email is the first step to returning our world to the world that we recognize together. UV Angel is a solution that installs in your ceilings and purifies the air at a 50 cubic feet per minute rate and is 99% effective against COVID and 87 other airborne pathogens. Ladies and gentlemen, COVID isn't going away. It's here to stay. We must adapt and adjust to our circumstances. As a school board, you are in a unique position. You have the power to have these devices installed into your school and lead the way into Tennessee toward a statewide solution. We are all getting covered. This whole thing is covered with a 100% FEMA grant. That's right, no cost to the schools or the county. This is the first ever approved grant that's a preventative damage control by FEMA. PRMS is a firm responsible for facilitating all these grants. They process everything for you. We will write your grant, and they have already done this successfully in other states. The grants will be rewarded, and the funds are, the whole entire process is taken care of by PRMS. They will also write in there the soft cost and the 2-year maintenance. Essentially, it is 99% effective COVID solution against COVID and the airborne pathogens at no cost for 2 years to you guys. I'm asking you today to follow up with the email, set a time for you to be educated, and start the process. This is a universal health issue, and now we have the tool to fight it, so let's do it together. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dwight Withrow.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Battle. I'm Dwight Withrow. I'm obviously from Chattanooga. The reason I'm here is last week I noticed on the news, board member Ms. Bush had an article on there. We were talking about what was going on in all the schools, the same thing all of our kids are facing, the same thing all of us are facing as parents and grandparents, is a mask issue. So obviously what we have here with the UV Angel is a solution that's not going to cost the taxpayers anything because we've already paid for it federal dollars. So I would like to ask that you take the lead in the state of Tennessee and do what Chicago District 53 Dr. O'Malley did with the school. I know you guys received an email today with the video showing the technology of this equipment. This is not the end of this. COVID, obviously influenza coming next is what we're hearing on the news. We don't know how bad flu season is going to be. All these viruses are basically treated by cleaning the air. So we need to take advantage of this. Also, I don't know how many of your schools here are swapped over from fluorescent bulbs to LEDs, but this grant covers that. So if you want to save the taxpayers' dollars, save the school money, you're able to do that. So this is not affecting the CARES that coming out of the ESSERS grant. This is a strictly FEMA grant. This is there that a lot of people don't realize, but the grant writers have the ability to do that. That's what they've been doing every day for other cities and other states and other school districts. So I ask that you just take a look at that. I don't work for this. I don't work for the company. I'm just a parent and grandparent. As of last week, when my daughter called and said, hey, can you take off and keep the kids because we've got to shut down school for cleaning. This is a preventive maintenance that's going to run 24/7. Shutting down and cleaning schools is nothing but a snow globe effect. And if you guys look at the presentation with the company, the science behind it, you'll understand it better. So I ask that you just take a look at that and try to keep our kids safe, keep them in the school buildings learning instead of remote, because a lot of us parents don't have time to be teachers. We can't be teachers. We're not educators. So I just ask that we do that, and appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Thank you. Courtney Powers. Karen Sun.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board, Dr. Battle. My name is Karen Sun. I'm a social studies teacher at East Nashville Magnet Middle School, and I reside in Vice Chair Elrod's district. I'm here in front of y'all for two reasons today. The first being my gratitude to the board for passing the resolution protecting teachers from HB 580. Legality has never equated to morality, and regardless of the law that was passed by Governor Lee in May, it is both indefensible and immoral to teach lies or half-truths to children. Children at any age deserve the chance to try to make sense of the world around them. I feel that though this is a commitment to the bare minimum of not being racist, instead of a commitment to work towards anti-racism, and I look forward to seeing what the board will do in coming months. But this point in particular leads me to the other reason I'm speaking here today. I've heard some worrying whispers that there are board members pushing to expand the use of school resource officers back into elementary schools, which is a wasteful use of resources available to MNPS. I know how MNPS's budget works. I am aware that the money for SROs comes from MMPD's budget, but it's not about the budget. It's not about the budget. This is what safety means for students, especially for Black and brown students. MNPS's own stated goal is to make every student known, but putting SROs back into elementary schools puts that goal into jeopardy. We've seen reports about Black elementary students getting violently arrested, not just in Tennessee. There's some that I've seen in Florida, and know that it has happened in this district prior. How are other students supposed to feel safe in schools around SROs after witnessing that? And it will not be just Black and brown students alone that are affected, and this applies to middle and high schools too, but also disabled, LGBTQ, queer, neurodivergent students, or any student in the intersections of those. Our resources and time could be better spent recruiting and retaining school counselors, guidance counselors, nurses, more teachers in the classroom, more support staff, literally anything else that affects how safe students feel in school, people that help students be known. I urge y'all to reconsider expanding the use of SROs into elementary schools. Thank you and take care.
Thank you. Marcus Frater Lockett.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board. My name is Marcus Trotter Lockett. I am District 5, I think Christiane Bug's district. I have been a resident of Nashville my entire life, and I'm a lifelong student of MNPS schools. I hope to speak with you today about what was just mentioned, the troubling rhetoric reemerging around student resource officers. In adulthood, I've taken a deep interest in the safety, success, and well-being of our students, and I've begun work with an advocacy organization known as Safer Schools Nashville. Given the tumult and unprecedented disruption of the last almost 2 years, it has been a wonderful privilege interacting with, learning from these same students through work as an advocate for them. This has been an unprecedented experience for all involved, but has been especially hard on students. And if we have learned anything, I hope that it is, just as we have had to reimagine schooling in a pandemic, it has also become imperative to reimagine the future of how we approach student safety and their well-being. I commend the school board for doing their best to support the success of their students in these times that truly no one could have prepared for, but recent rhetoric and support of the increase of school resource officers at levels as low as elementary school, just as mentioned, would constitute, in my opinion, a severe misstep. The news of any students bringing a gun to school is an unfortunate development for MNPS, but as touched upon by previous speakers, an increase in officers in schools is reactionary and dissatisfactory for a litany of reasons, ranging from appalling disparities in discipline by race and ability, the already worryingly high ranking of MNPS in student arrests within the state of Tennessee, and the inevitable effect increases in officers could have on the funding for the already inadequate amount of nurses, counselors, and psychologists across the district. Punitive measures will always produce punitive results. And as advocates have laid out tonight and in the past, data and anecdotes do not support such an approach promoting student success, and would even seem, in most cases, and in my opinion, to serve as a detriment. It is my hope that, with this in mind, MNPS can take steps in response to these recent events that aren't commiserate to the reflexive and reactionary policies that already punish and penalize our students, but policies that reaffirm their humanity and well-being as central to their success. These teachers in schools use the tools that they are provided, and many schools across the district have found success in programs grounded in restorative justice, social emotional learning, and other forms of reimagined discipline. As students will hopefully soon emerge from a long period of isolation and uncertainty brought on by this pandemic, an opportunity exists in lieu of more student resources, in lieu of more SROs to rectify persistent issues with adequate funding for the recommended number of nurses, counselors, and mental health staff, while also exploring new approaches like restorative practice assistance and investment in social emotional learning. I hope the board keeps an open mind, and I thank you all for your time and patience, and I hope you really, really think before making decisions on this issue that would penalize and further criminalize our students. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. James Franklin Spencer III.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to speak on behalf of myself and also Officer Anthony Martinez, that's not here, but on Martinez, I will leave you guys his speech. So I'd like to start off by thanking Dr. Battle. Thank you, thank you. You've listened, you've heard, and you've acted. So much that you've changed and hired a new chief operating officer that's going to be servicing us as far as our EOO. Mara Black Sullivan, please take a long, strong look at our security department, the executive director's position, and the swift change in that position should be done as well. Dr. Battle started the chemotherapy, and you should finish because the toxicity is still there. The longer you wait to make the changes to the security department, the longer our students and staff in the district's safety are in question. The issues in the security department will continue to get worse, from no plan for a functional and thriving security department to no plan to retaining officers into the district. Officers are still leaving. That's what happened with Officer Tony Martinez. It's a dog handler, a search dog, searching for drugs, searching for guns, gone because of the toxicity in the department. So before you made the change, he had already made a decision to leave, okay? Someone is going to get hurt soon behind, let's cover this up. There's a reactionary plan to every incident, and that plan is once it happened, heads will roll. But I myself have no chill about fighting for issues with my kids, my money, and my peace. MNPS has two on those checklists right now, my money and my peace. So I appreciate Ms. Buggs, Claire Peter Players for the conversation, Ms. Fran Bush for bringing all of this to the light, and I'd like to say thank you.
Thank you. Anthony Martinez. Tanya Hancock.
Hello, thank you for affording me the opportunity to speak. My name is Tanya Hancock. I live in Madison, Tennessee, 37115. I'm in Metro Council. I serve District 9 in Madison, and I'm in District 3 for the school board with Emily Masters, and I thank her for her service. And I'd also like to thank Angeline Ebenezer for agreeing to serve on the board, as well as Chair Buggs and Vice Chair Elrod for your continued leadership, and all of you for the work you guys are doing here for our schools. I ran for Metro Council specifically because of our schools, and I wanted to fully fund our schools and make sure you had what you need, because I know you know what to do with it. I'm not an educator. I have worked in education sales for, how many years now? 21 years, but that does not give me the right to decide what is best for all of our students, and I trust that you guys know what to do. I know that having Dr. Battle at the helm has just been a warm embrace for our entire community, and we're very appreciative and put all of our trust in her for what she has done, not only in the last 18 months as we've survived this crazy time, but also for your entire career and your service to Metro Nashville Public Schools. Speaking as a member of the Education Committee on Council, we serve to technically review legislation that comes through about education funding, but also to be advocates for the school board and for the school district. I am serving now as B.B. Hines mentioned earlier as the liaison for Metro Council to the Parent Advisory Council. Very pleased to do that, and also super excited to see all the MNEA representatives that are here today. It's just another example to our community of how educators give and give and give, and it's sometimes a thankless job, and I just want to know, I want all of you to know that you are thanked. We do love you and appreciate you. As everyone knows from the news everywhere, Tennessee is #1 in the nation. Not for something exciting like Tennessee football. We haven't been #1 since 1998. But, you know, of course, for COVID, and that's not exciting. Something I'm really excited about is that MNPS is the bottom of the pack in COVID spread. We're usually not excited about schools being the bottom of the pack, but that's an awesome accomplishment. So thank you so much for the leadership that you're providing for our schools. I have a 3rd grader in Metro Nashville Public Schools. He's currently on quarantine, which I completely understand. He's healthy right now, and I hope that continues. He also understands. He misses his friends, but he understands that he doesn't want to help anyone else get sick. So for safety first, he's staying at home until he's permitted to go back, and we're doing any assignments we can, and just want to know that we're here for you, and let me know if you need anything.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Councilmember Hancock. And with that, we will conclude public participation and move into governance issues. We have a consent agenda. Do I have any amendments to that consent agenda as listed?
Yes.
Mrs. Tyler?
I'd like to pull the ESSER plan and related documents off.
All right, so that is consent agenda item C, ESSER plan and related documents. All right, do we have any other amendments to the consent agenda as listed? All right, do we have a motion to accept it with the amendment pulling off item C?
Motion to move the consent agenda as amended.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All right, we will move on to discussion. Mrs. Tyler.
We didn't vote.
We want to vote?
We didn't vote.
We didn't vote. Let's try that again. So it's been moved and seconded to accept the consent agenda as amended. All in favor, please raise your hand. All right, it's unanimous with one missing. Now we will move on to item C, ESSER plan and related documents. Mrs. Tyler.
I move to open up a discussion about the ESSER plan related documents.
Okay. Quick question. So she moved to open up discussion about the ESSER plan. Does it have to be actionable? I'm sorry. Okay, so Mrs. Tyler, looks like it does need to be actionable either to accept or approve or deny. Mrs. Roberge, would you give us some guidance?
I can definitely scream loud enough. I don't need the microphone. Yes, there needs to be an action item and then a second and then a discussion.
Okay, last time I wasn't sure if I wanted to make something pass or not, and I wanted the discussion, and Dr. Gentry said that you could make a motion just to have a discussion.
Just to table it?
And
Yeah,
we
there just
did
needs to
that.
be some motion action item.
Okay, so it has to be a just.
So it could be to accept, to deny, or to defer? Is that?
Or to table it, yeah.
Okay.
I
make a motion to approve. I'm sorry, Mrs., did you have a
go for it.
motion, Mrs. Player Peters? Go ahead, Mrs. Player Peters.
To approve the plan for the ESSER plan and related documents.
All right, so it's been moved to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All right, we'll kick it to Ms. Tyler for discussion. Thank you all.
Great, thank you. So just going over this, I wanted to get a little bit of clarity on several of the things in there. And the first thing was I noticed that emblazoned across all of it was the Tennessee State Best for All program. And so I just wanted to know what extent are we participating in the state's Best for All program?
I'm sorry, yes, go ahead, Dr. Battle.
Carrie Randolph, if you want to approach the podium, and I'll begin speaking as you're coming up. We've not made a commitment or decision around, is that the Best for All program, or am I misspeaking? Okay, the Best for All program. We have not made a decision about participating or not. We want to be very mindful about entering into such a program and commitment because we want to stay true to the needs of our MNPS students and where the board's priorities have been over the last year, 2 years, definitely navigating the pandemic. And so we're being very thoughtful and careful about any commitment in that space. The truth of the matter is lots of things align to the buckets that are there, but we wanted to create our plan first and not force fit our plan into to that particular grant opportunity.
Okay, that helps to know. Would we have to fill out a separate application to join that if that's what we decide to do?
Dr. Randolph, I'll kick it to you.
That's a great question. It's a little unclear. The guidance we've seen from TDOE just says that they'll evaluate our submitted materials to see if we qualify. Based on my assessment, we do qualify for that, and so we'll wait to see what they say, but that's not really clear at this point.
Okay. So is there a possibility that we could be enrolled just by qualifying with the amount that we're spending on their choices for Best for All?
Yeah, I mean, the way that the guidance we've been given just really says it will make us eligible for other grant opportunities. There'll be some commendations you probably saw if you looked it up, but otherwise, I think what it just means for us is that there are grants coming out to districts who qualify that aren't available to other districts.
I just was trying to figure it out because I couldn't find anything about how to apply or not apply. So it sounds like that's universally not well understood.
That's my understanding, but I do, to your point, I don't know about auto enrollment, but I do think if we qualify, that's what it will look like based on our application.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. And then I had some questions about the details in there. So the first thing is, what's the difference between the tutoring that we're getting through our own district that we're providing and then the tutoring that we would receive from the Tennessee All Core tutoring program?
Yes, thank you for that question. I'll kick it over to Dr. Randolph. But to kind of kick off our response here, we wanted to be very cognizant of sustainability for our tutoring model so that high-impact tutoring is happening for our students now and in the future, regardless of the funding mechanism. But I'll kick it to Dr. Randolph to talk specifically about the difference between the two.
I would co-sign what Dr. Battle said. We tried to be very thoughtful from the beginning about building a sustainable system and using ESSER as an opportunity to do that.
The way All-Core works is the model that we're using qualifies for All-Core, and it means we would receive matching funds, $700 a student, through All-Core. So we have put in an intent to apply for All-Core funds, but we've been in contact with TDOE, and the model that we currently have is what we would do. It also, I think you mentioned this, makes some of our students, it opens up some free high school tutoring that TDOE is providing. We don't have details on that. I think they're still running an RFP process, so we don't know exactly what that looks like, and certainly we'll be careful and thoughtful about implementing that, but really it can support the work we're already doing and leverage our ESSER funds to get additional funds for tutoring.
That's helpful, because a second part of that was just wondering about if our plan is to grow high dosage tutoring, then when the money runs out, how do we sustain that? So it sounds like that's already something you guys have been considering all along. That's good to hear. Just a couple detailed questions about some of the numbers. So in the approved instructional materials at the elementary level, it says that we're going to spend about $9 million for Wit and Wisdom materials alone. Is that included as part of the overall $17 million that we're planning to spend on high quality materials, or is that in addition to the $17 million?
All right, so the plan that you're reviewing includes ESSER 1, 2, and 3. ESSER 2 included $9 million for Wit and Wisdom. Of course, that's our K-5 adoption. The additional $17 million is for the upcoming math adoption. Again, planning ahead, we have these conversations on a yearly basis in other content areas. So not just the math adoption, there are other areas that we have to backfill in instructional materials. You're asking that question because the template is confusing. Okay. And so what it represents more than what we just been talking about in ESSER 3, but a representation of ESSER 1, 2, and 3. But in a nutshell, you have that representation of dollars for the ELA curriculum, Wit and Wisdom, but also for the upcoming adoption for math materials and other backfilling for content areas.
Okay. So they are two separate amounts, but they're from separate ESSER
That's
rounds.
Correct.
Okay, that makes a little bit more sense. And then I guess continuing on that, then looking at that $17 million that we're spending on the high quality, I noticed, and like you said, that we're really putting an emphasis on new high quality math curriculum materials, and the state is in the process of adopting a new math curriculum, but we don't know what that's going to be yet. So I was just wondering, why are we putting an emphasis on purchasing that if they're going to be obsolete? Do we know for a fact that it will be chosen before we have to spend the money? I just want to make sure that if we're spending it on math, that we're spending it on what we're going to use in a long-term situation instead of just until this new curriculum gets adopted.
Yes, that $17 million is specifically for, the majority of it is for math, and it is for specifically the upcoming adoption, okay, not a purchase or an adoption prior to the adoption cycle.
Okay. And I'm sure that there is a date that we have to spend the money by, and I know that the curriculum committees are meeting as we speak, and I can't remember, is there a date that they have to have that finished? Is that the curriculum committee? Are we basically, do we know for sure that we're going to know what the curriculum is before we have to spend our money?
Unless they make any more changes, we've been very thoughtful about that and can meet the spending deadline.
Okay.
Yes, so we've paired the adoption timeline to the ESSER spending allocation deadline. So yes, as long as there's not any additional changes, because adoption was pushed back a year or 2 years. Yeah. Spring of 23 is the adoption timeline.
And when do we have to have this money spent, the ESSER?
24.
23.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, even better.
All right. My next question is, I think it's worth noting that if you look at our student body makeup, that it's kind of slowly been changing over the years, and the greatest gain that we've seen in the percentage of students are our students who are Hispanic. And so when we look at establishing sustainable teacher recruitment models, are we putting an emphasis on recruiting teachers who represent our current student body? I know that we've long emphasized recruiting more teachers who are Black, so our Black students see themselves represented in the classroom, and we should be doing that. And I just want to make sure that, knowing that our Hispanic population is growing at the leaps and bounds that it is, are we also putting similar emphasis on seeking out teachers who are Hispanic?
Absolutely. If you recall back, it might have been a few months ago when Dr. Barnes presented around our HR efforts and recruitment. We have been intentional, and he was intentional in articulating the need for us to recruit and retain educators and support employees who represent our student population. So that continues to be a conversation. In fact, Melissa and I have already had that conversation about our focus efforts in that space as we move forward, so that we are constantly keeping up and tracking our enrollment data, the diversity that exists, and aligning that to our recruitment efforts.
Great. It's so important that our teaching body represents the students that they teach, and that they can see themselves in the classroom, in front of the classroom. So I'm glad to hear that. I'm not surprised that you guys are already doing that, so thank you.
We're working on it.
I had a question about, in the monitoring, auditing, and data collection and reporting section, it's said that one of the things that we're going to use to measure is the SEL survey. What is that survey?
Great question. Carrie, do you mind talking about Sown to Grow for just a moment?
Not at all. So Sown to Grow, something we have added to our Navigator program this year, and it has a research-based SEL assessment that students have taken or are taking right now. So that's what's referred to in those metrics.
Okay, so is it attached to something that we've already been using, or is it something that we've developed separately?
We didn't develop it, but our SEL team did review it, and it's aligned to the CASEL standards that we use.
I also had a question about the money that, when you detailed it out, and then you had a section where it would say other in the category, and I noticed that when you broke down the other spending, if you added it up, it didn't always match the same number that it was in the top part. So like on page 6 in the application, it expands on what the other contains for academics, but it only adds up to about $38 million. But it says that we're spending $58 million on other. So what are we spending that extra $20 million on that's not been detailed? And there are similar questions as far as in the educator category, there's $17 million that's not accounted for. And in foundations, there's about $16 million that's not accounted for.
All right, Dr. Randolph, if you want to respond appropriately.
So the template is pretty frustrating, I'll be honest. This is the state's template, so we're taking our plan, and the way they've broken it down by their funding buckets, which ours aligned to some extent, is pretty challenging. We have the other broken out on our website. I mean, the best place to look at our plan is actually what Dr. Battle has shared and is on the website. We were trying to take that and kind of get it into this template that's required by the state. So I just want to acknowledge that that's where some of this is coming from. Part of this has to do with the summary page and the way that this has been formatted. And so probably the best example is when you look at the student readiness category, for example, and you look at the chart on page 8 that lists economically disadvantaged student with disabilities, right? That covers lots of buckets, if you will, or priorities for us. And so these funds cover, that's the way we think about this. The state really wants, the way the template works, that makes it confusing when you go to add everything up. So really, we're working with them on that right now to make this more understandable to all of us, but particularly the public. But what's on our website is our plan, and we're just trying to make it fit their template. So what happens is when you use their template, sometimes the expenses show up in more than one category based on that strategic move. So like PD, for example, sometimes materials, the way that they break it out is not the way that we have thought about it or been talking about it and planning around. So it's a bit of a square peg, round hole, honestly, situation when we're trying to put this together. This also includes ESSER 1, 2, and 3. I find that to be a bit confusing. So that's where you'll see a bit of, we have an approved ESSER 2 plan, we have an approved ESSER 1 plan. So ESSER 3 is what's really simple to look at on our website. So we're actually working with the state to make this a little bit more understandable. But if you want to see what's happening with ESSER 3, that's the easiest place to look, and we're just working with their template.
On our website, it's detailed out much more specifically than it is in what we received. Okay, that's.
Well, and it was the template versus trying to get everything in a very user-friendly, common sense approach to what we're leveraging our ESSER funds for. And that template is very difficult and complicated. It might have taken us more time to figure that out than putting the plan together, but we wanted to be very transparent, which is why everything is posted on our school website, why we did the stakeholder engagement the way that we did, and other board presentations and retreats, just to make sure that everyone was kind of following along with the board's priorities, what we received back in our stakeholder engagement, and how that was represented in our ESSER funds.
All right, thank you. And so that's all my questions, but I did just want to note that I'm really pleased to see that you have line items specifically detailed and dedicated for strategic teacher retention and class size reductions. Both of those have been validated for years as statistically significant ways to improve student achievement and to make classes manageable for teachers to do their job. So I just am very pleased to see that we recognize what the research has shown us actually works to help our students, and that we're working towards doing those things. So thank you.
And thank you for that acknowledgement, and also the recognition of, again, this board's support in spiraling funds directly to our schools, which gives them the ability to staff according to their school needs. And so our school leaders, our school leadership teams have really owned that space and leveraging the research-based practices to help meet the needs of their students and really making every dollar count. So thank you for that. Thank you, Dr. Randolph.
Go ahead, Mrs. Masters. Sorry.
You can just call me Miss Emily. That's what everybody calls me. It's fine. Okay, I have questions about measures, as you might have guessed. So I'm just wondering, so we're putting a lot of emphasis on the tutoring. I'm wondering how we are going to measure the impact, of the tutoring programs in a way that we will know that was, where the impact came from. Because, of course, they're moving back and forth from highly qualified teachers and to the tutoring. So I'm just wondering how we're going to differentiate that.
All right, Dr. Randolph, I'll kick it to you to talk through, just our gold standard model and how we're identifying students and then measuring the impact of our high impact tutoring program.
Yeah. So we've been very thoughtful about this, and we have our research partner in Brown University and the Annenberg Institute are considered leaders in tutoring nationally. They've helped us design our work in tutoring. And we are doing a research study on it because the conditions are right and we can meet the needs of kids at the same time. Hear me say that. So we'll have matched cohorts of students. So we're launching in 46 schools on Monday. And we will be able to compare those students, we know a lot about them, to match cohorts of students who aren't receiving tutoring right now. We hope to grow this so it's available for all students. So we've been really intentional around that design so that we can, to your point, isolate. We're measuring across several dimensions, so certainly academics, right? Literacy or numeracy, depending on the student area for tutoring. We're also looking at SEL measures, right? And we're looking kind of holistically at a student, even around attendance and engagement and things like that. Sense of belonging is another area we're looking at.
Thank you. That's exciting to know that there's a research project included. Next question about measures. Since we are putting so many eggs from so many different areas, both from our regular budget and ESSER funds into our advocacy centers, same question is, how are we going to be measuring the impact of those programs? And then within that, hopefully measure the success of those programs around behavioral outcomes, suspensions and expulsions, so that we can sort of gauge. I know last year was a little weird because half the students were at home.
And the year before.
And then the year before it was a little weird because students went home. So I'm just kind of wondering, how are we going to be able to dig in and know that these advocacy centers are doing what we need them to do around helping us, with restorative justice measures and so.
Yeah, a few things, again, I want to highlight. The board's budget priorities are definitely represented in our ESSER plan. In fact, the foundation for building it. We also have our focus outcomes that we will continue to measure. We are keyed in on what outcomes we want for our students around literacy, numeracy, SEL, and their transitions. If you remember back to our signature initiatives, one of them specifically is around a research practice partnership with Vanderbilt, which you'll be learning more about in a couple of weeks. That's another example of how we are monitoring and evaluating the impact of these programs. Now, we have various partnerships happening. The research practice partnership is one. Carrie's talked about some of the university evaluation happening. I'm looking back at Dr. Changus. His team is all over the evaluate portion of our strategies and our ESSER plan. And so we have identified particularly our high leverage investments and measuring the impact that those investments have on our intended outcomes around our focus outcomes. But I will also yield to Dr. Randolph or Dr. Changus if you want to add anything to the evaluation portion of our high impact strategies.
I mean, Dr. Changus is the expert, but we've been really intentional in that we are bringing resources to bear in addition to some staff and Dr. Changus's team to run program evaluation and to make sure that we're getting return on investment across these. So.
All I will add is that specifically with the question about behavior incidents, obviously, as I've said on the board floor before in the past year, monitoring data has been especially challenging in the past year. However, we can look at, from our data warehouse, at behavior over a range of dates, and we can look at comparable data pre-pandemic and what's happening over that period of time and compare it to a reasonable amount of time in the current space. But there are some challenges there, but we can establish a reasonable baseline.
Thank you. And then to that same point, I want to be sure that we're not creating a system where teachers are referring students to the advocacy centers in the same way that in the past they were referred for behavior interventions. So, not to be like a broken record, but I would love to see us talking about mandatory implicit bias training system-wide, because I do think that could potentially play into referrals even to advocacy centers, which are going to be a much more positive source of intervention and de-escalation. But that's been my concern, is that it's going to just be another version of certain students being referred for that resource.
I didn't know if you had another question. So our advocacy center coaches who are now in buildings are just now transitioning in, because we've spent several days, weeks, Dr. Springer, training our advocacy coaches on our model for support of students. And that includes also the training that will happen with our staff. And so the intent is, and we've said this from the very beginning, advocacy centers are not in school suspension spaces. There is a time limit. There is a a collaborative referral process that helps us monitor what supports are being provided in our advocacy center and when there are additional supports that are needed. And so this model has been vetted. It has been shared widely around what our intended outcomes and supports are for students in our advocacy centers. We will continue to train our teachers. Every school kind of has their plan of training for their teachers based upon the needs of their school. Implicit bias is definitely one of the offerings for schools as they create their pathway of learning, but we will continue to train our coaches, our teachers around implicit bias, and the appropriate structures for our advocacy centers all across our elementary schools.
Thank you, and thank you for your work, Dr. Springer. Okay. Next question is, I see that we are continuing to fund for nurses, which is amazing and wonderful. I just kind of wondering, where are we with nurses right now with vacancies, and what sort of measures are we going to be able to take to, and I know this is veering a little from ESSER, although I think it's still related because we continue to come up with funding for nurses, but then we got to come up with nurses. So I'm just kind of wondering where we are on that.
Well, we're fortunate that we're part of the ELC grant that allows us to fund nurses in schools this year in conjunction with the funding sources that we have available. And I feel like I sound like a broken record here, but just like in previous conversations around our teacher vacancies, our bus drivers, our nutrition services, nurses are the same. I mean, what we're hearing from nurses right now is that they're being pulled in so many different directions, expected to do a lot more, as everyone is expected to do, which is also increasing the need for additional nurses in our schools. So we are still recruiting and need nurses for our schools, because our vision and the vision of this board has been to get a nurse in every school. And so we're still working towards that goal. Every school has a nurse assigned to the school. We do still have a number of schools sharing a nurse where they might be there half day at a number of schools, but the majority of our schools have a full-time nurse. So we're still in need of nurses. If you're listening, if you know someone who is qualified and capable, please send them our way, because we're still in need of trained and qualified nurses to support us during this time and as we're beginning to navigate this pandemic more successfully.
Okay, I think that's all my questions about the ESSER plan, and nice work on it. I know that's a lot to work within those kind of templates and plans to create those applications.
All right, any other questions about the ESSER plan before we vote? I will selfishly say that if you signed up at pencilforschools.org to participate in tutoring with BrightPath, it's about 5 hours worth of modules that are quite intense, but they are good, and I feel prepared to meet my Pearl Cone baby on Monday for our 30-minute tutoring session, and I continue to just challenge the community or even my board members that have the capacity during the week to meet with the student for 30 minutes. You can choose a child in your district, you can choose a young child, an older child. I have, again, a high school student, so just something to consider. All right, with that, we've already had a motion to accept the ESSER plan as listed. All in favor, please raise your hand. All right, passes unanimously with one person missing. And I do want to continue to acknowledge our 2 student board members who are here. I know this is your first night, but if at any point you feel like you have a question or you would like to respond, please feel free to let us know. Just raise your hand and we'll call on you. But because they were selected and not elected by the community, they are unable to vote, but they will weigh in just to offer student voice and continue to help us engage the community at large. All right, with that, we'll move on to the director's report. Dr. Battle.
All right, thank you again, Madam Chair. It's just a second to get the PowerPoint moving here. Board members, you all should have a copy of the presentation in front of you. You've also received an email version of my report for this evening. First and foremost, thank you for that perfect segue, Chair Buggs, because I wanted to add my thanks and admiration to Angelique and Ebenezer for their willingness to serve their community and represent their fellow students on this board. Let's give them another round of applause. So let me tell you, this work is not easy, but it is extremely rewarding. And I think you'll see that pretty quickly as you dive into the work of the board and start to get things done. So welcome aboard, and we look forward to getting to know you more in the months ahead. And I also look forward to continuing to engage with you with our student voice leaders. So again, congratulations and welcome. So now I want to shift a moment to celebrate and recognize the achievements of several schools after state accountability data was released to districts. As a reminder, last year schools were asked to conduct TCAP testing with the understanding that scores would not count towards accountability unless they benefited them, such as for exiting priority school status. This year, Rosebank Elementary was able to exit priority status after several years in that extra support network. So let's give them a round of applause. This is a great accomplishment that comes from a lot of hard work from this team, and I've seen them in action. They've been working extremely hard, just like their peers all across the district. We're also thrilled to celebrate Glendale and Laughlin Elementary, both which achieve reward status based on Tennessee Ready data showing the gains they made across all their student groups. So let's give them a round of applause. Keep your hands warm, because John Overton High School and Margaret Allen Middle School are exiting additional targeted support and intervention status as a result of the improvements they've made, while Glencliff High School, Haywood Elementary, Hull Jackson Elementary, Englewood Elementary, and Jones Padilla are exiting targeted support and improvement status. All in a pandemic year. So kudos to those teams, and I just cannot sing their praises enough. Our teams are working hard daily. Everyone from our principals, our teachers, nutrition services, our bus drivers, monitors, everyone, our parapros, everyone's working so hard, and it is evident every time I get an opportunity to visit a school. And our students have returned and are doing great work, really buckling down. I'm enjoying and embracing every in-person learning day for this school year. So kudos to everyone for their hard work. Last week, we had the chance to go celebrate each of these schools and the leadership teams who made their achievements possible. I'm so proud of these schools, from the principals and their teams to the faculty and support staff, all the way down to the youngest students. And I wanted to show a short video we've made from our visits. Be pointing here.
Visitors with us today, and just a moment ago you did receive a cookie treat to announce that Rosebank has exited the priority school status list. Boys and girls, I need you to right now to turn around and give a hand clap for the grown-ups standing right in front of you. I'm listening.
So Rosebank is a historic school. We actually opened in the early 50s. And then, so we've been a neighborhood school for a very long time. And then about 3 years ago, we were recognized, by the state as a school in need of support. So we ended up on their priority status list. So what this is this is a recognition of how hard they've worked. I have the hardest working staff. I am James Brown. I have the hardest working staff in the business. They work so hard, and they're conscientious, they're driven, they're concerned. They want children to be successful, and when you have that as your team, then this is the outcome.
On the right track.
Yes.
So we're here to support.
I appreciate it so much.
Get it done.
Absolutely.
Congratulations to Laughlin. You are a reward school. Let's give it up for the students, the staff, the principal. We know this is just informal, but we're going
going to be congratulating and celebrating you the entire year. So we wanted the person to come over and on behalf of your executive director.
Happy Reward School. Principal Collins, just wanted to say thank you for all your hard work and recognize Glendale as a reward school for the last year, making every child known. We appreciate you and just want to say thank you this beautiful Wednesday morning.
Thank you. I think building relationships, that's one of our keys, I think, here to our success is that we take it seriously to make sure that every kid feels welcome and to get to know them, and not just the kids, but the parents and the faculty as well.
Ashley, just on behalf of Dr. Adrian Battle, the support hub, everything that Inglewood has done and stands for, to our MSAP team, to you and your leadership, you have exited a So we are here today. We are here today to celebrate you, because that's a celebration, right?
Yeah. Happy birthday. We wanted you to exit the building and come out here as a symbolic gesture of exiting ATSI. So we wanted to come out and just personally say congratulations and thank you for your leadership. Come on, Green Cliff. Principal Wilson, thank you for pulling your folks from their duties for a minute and coming outside. We just want to stop by, deliver you some balloons. Hopefully you've already got some cookies for the day. If not, Jason's Deli will be bringing some by. And we just wanted to celebrate you guys exiting ATSI status. We want to take a minute and celebrate Haywood this morning. I talked to you last week about the great news about the designation status. So we wanted to officially come out here, bring you some balloons and celebrate with you and your staff. How are you doing today? I'm doing well. How's everybody? Wonderful. We just want to stop by and say congratulations on your success last year and your exiting. And hopefully you've already received some cookies this morning for your faculty.
Yes, they were dropped off this morning.
Just wanted to tell you ladies, thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you. Congratulations.
The speeches is, I'm very fortunate to have some really smart people around me. And so all of y'all know that you can't do it by yourself. I just get to sign papers and let them do their magic. So that's what I do. So anyways, but thank you. I appreciate all the support. It's been a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful supportive effort. So thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, another round of applause. And I will just say, again, kudos to all of these school teams. We have reward schools, status schools all across this district. Our staff, they're stepping up in so many ways. You just wait for it. More to come on this celebration end of high achievement and excellence for our students, for our staff, this year and many, many more years to come. All right, so we're going to switch gears into our COVID-19 update. Let's see. If we can go to slide 3, perfect. All right, so COVID-19 remains a challenge to our daily way of life and the educational environment. Last week was a four-day week, and we had 504 students confirmed as positive for COVID-19, with 2,475 in quarantine or isolation. That's down from the week before, when 2,971 students were isolated or quarantined. Among staff last week, it was 75 confirmed positive and 108 staff quarantined or isolated. The trend lines are going in the right direction. However, we've seen before momentary peaks and valleys in the overall trend, and so we must continue to remain vigilant in protecting ourselves and others from the virus. In response to the pleas from superintendents in our suburban and rural districts, the Commissioner Penny Schwinn reinterpreted the rules for quarantine remote learning to allow for classrooms and schools to be eligible for remote learning with a waiver that has to be personally approved by her. A significant component in that approval appears to be the ability of the school or district to maintain staffing. We have been fortunate that while staffing can be challenging, overall we have been able to meet the needs of our students across the various departments and schools that serve them. In fact, I shared with the board last week a project that we launched in response to the needs of our schools, and we've been met with pretty good success. Our relative success in this is likely a result of a high proportion of our staff being vaccinated, which reduces the need to quarantine unless symptomatic and also helps our staff more quickly recover if they do contract the virus. Next slide, please. As a reminder, here are our COVID mitigation strategies. Universal masking remains one of the most important mitigation strategies we have, especially among our unvaccinated student population. Media reports indicate that Nashville and Memphis, who have both stuck to our universal mask mandates, have seen lower per capita cases amongst the student-age population. Social distancing when feasible, and we understand in many circumstances 6 feet is not feasible, but to the greatest extent possible, that is our guidance, along with seating charts, cohorting of students, and other strategies to limit potential exposures in the school building. Washing hands, using hand sanitizer, and coughing into your sleeve remain best practices to reduce the spread of the COVID-19 virus and other illnesses. Our custodial teams will continue using CDC-approved disinfectants to sanitize buildings, and contact tracing and quarantines are also critical to stopping COVID-19 from being transmitted in our buildings. The medical science indicates that someone can contract COVID and be contagious 2 days before they would test positive for the virus, which is why it is so vitally important that we identify someone as a close contact. We keep them home until we know it is safe for them to return. Finally, vaccines remain the single best thing we can all do to slow the spread of the virus and protect ourselves from serious illness if we do contract COVID. We know that President Biden wants to roll out vaccine booster shots for those who are already fully vaccinated. And if and when the FDA approves this approach, we'll work with our health partners to ensure our team members and students who are eligible to have access when available. We are still likely several weeks away from the vaccine being approved for children ages 5 through 12. Next slide, please. Now, I'm going to shift a bit so that we can get a brief update on our MAP assessments that were conducted starting at the start of this school year. Next slide. MAP results support 2 of our core tenets, and you consistently hear us refer back to our core tenets. The student data are part of supporting and monitoring a personalized learning experience for all students. The disaggregated results by student group also help us identify inequities in our student performance. The growth data from MAP are the primary reasons for our literacy and numeracy-focused outcomes. Our fall data establishes a baseline as we measure academic growth in literacy and numeracy over the course of the school year. MAP data and the projections they provide are helpful in determining students' preparedness as they transition from tier to tier or beyond high school. MAP data also are important to several of our signature initiatives as are represented on this PowerPoint slide. Next slide, please. Now, we will have, you can go ahead and click through that slide. We will have more detailed report on MAP results in 2 weeks, as makeup testing just ended on Friday, and we're still digging into that data. So we did extend that window just a bit just to accommodate students who might be in the quarantine space. The measures of academic progress, or MAP, assessment were administered in grades 2 through 9 between August 10th and 27th, with an additional 2 weeks of makeups for students previously quarantined. Over 35,000 students were tested in language arts and mathematics, with test participation rates above 90% in both subjects. These results establish a new baseline for the 21-22 school year and assist us in identifying students in need of additional supports. The preliminary analysis indicates scores have declined somewhat from previous years, which is consistent with what we, the entire state, and schools across the nation saw last year. So the data is looking to be pretty consistent from the conversations we've had during the spring and over the summer. Next slide, please. In addition to having step-by-step information and videos on our website to assist families in assessing and understanding the personalized student dashboard, schools are distributing flyers and letters about the dashboard as well as doing call-outs. Links to the student dashboard survey are available through our website and through social media, and we encourage families to take the survey and help us plan for future assessments. So we are pushing out the map data into the personalized dashboard that's starting to show up. We'll continue to analyze lots of our data points. As you recall, as we ended out last school year, we extended the year by a month with our Promising Scholars. We've administered our MAP assessment, but we also have our universal screeners happening as well. So we want to make sure that we are able to give you a fuller picture around where our students are. And of course, you know already our high yield strategies and moving them forward and to close our performance gaps. Next slide, please. Essential to many of our plans is engagement with parents to be able to track the progress of their students. That's why we launched the Personalized Student Dashboard at the end of last school year. This month and next, we're going to continue encouraging families to sign up and get access to their students' personalized dashboard. Many families already had access, as the dashboard is housed in the Infinite Campus Family Portal. Schools just last week received flyers to pass out along with progress reports, and we'll be working with our schools to help further get the word out to families about this useful service. We also have a walkthrough on our website that shows the benefits of the Personalized Student Dashboard and how families can use it to access the critical information. We are currently in phase 1 of the dashboard, and we're working to develop phase 2 along with tutorials. We also have a survey where we're asking parents to let us know which features they would like to see in order to make the dashboard even better to show focused outcomes and the progress students are making to achieve them. So we've already started this feedback process to make sure we're getting input and we can make the necessary adjustments as we move forward. So again, information on the website. Our schools are equipped with this information. We also send information home with all students. Last week, we were kicking off a campaign in our schools to get over 80% of our families enrolled and sign up in Infinite Campus so they can have access to the Personalized Student Dashboard. We do not want this valuable resource to go untapped. So getting access is the key. As parents interact with the Personalized Student Dashboard, they can give us feedback on what's useful about it and what additional enhancements we can leverage for the dashboard as we move forward. And then finally, I want to remind everyone of our ongoing Celebration of Schools campaign to highlight the great work of our school teams and what they're doing across MNPS to ensure every student is known. We are celebrating a new school every day that we are in session in the 21-22 school year. So this calendar won't end. You can find a school every single day. In fact, today we celebrate Gateway Elementary, or the Gateway to the Great Way, as they call it. Gateway was opened in 1963 and is being led by Principal Ashley Jackson, who is new to the school this year after previously serving as an AP at Schwab. So please, please, please visit mnps.org/celebrate to learn more about how you too can share in the celebration. So we will keep celebrating all of our schools. I mentioned earlier that there's a reward school in every MNPS school, more to come, but we definitely would appreciate your support and learning more about the magic that's happening inside all of our schools and classrooms on a daily basis. So with that, Madam Chair, that will conclude my director's report, and I will turn it back over to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for that report, Dr. Battle. Before we move on to the board discussion around MNPS Security Board Policy 5.501, are there any questions? Okay, we'll go with Ms. Tyler, then Mrs. Elrod, and then Mrs. Player-Peters.
I've had some parents and teachers in middle and high school, not even just from my district, but in other areas of the throughout MNPS, who've said that they're a little concerned because their school is not cohorting their students the way that you're suggesting. And so I was just wondering, I know that last year the principals were supposed to kind of check in and say, these are the things that we're doing to prevent spread, and if we cannot do them, this is the reason why. Is that still something that you guys are doing? Do you have are there reasons why we know if these schools can or cannot do that cohorting? And how can we let those parents know that so that they feel like they're in the loop?
Yeah, this is a recent adjustment that we've made internally. We now require the seating charts and the cohorting to the greatest extent possible, particularly in our lower grades, to help with our contact tracing and mitigating the spread of the virus. So it is a shift that we made after we started to have the number of positive cases and the number of quarantines that we have. So we reinstituted that from our plans from last year to strengthen our mitigation strategies for this upcoming year. But Dr. Bellamy, please add any additional details.
Not a lot to add, Dr. Battle, except that obviously it's at the secondary level that becomes extremely more complicated, right? So cohorting students at the secondary level can be quite challenging. So we are relying on seating charts as much as possible, as well as patrolling hallways to make sure that we're utilizing the same simple structures that worked last year and making sure that you have traffic going specific ways and things of that nature. But I would also reach out, and any parent that has questions, any of our principals are accessible and would be more than happy to discuss what is and isn't able to be implemented in each individual building, for sure. Yes, ma'am.
I figured I'd ask y'all too. Then also on our website, when we're looking at like the COVID guidance on the MNPS website, it says that the school nurse is supposed to be the point of contact for all COVID concerns. But when you click on the contact your school nurse, it takes you to nashville.gov. And there's not really any way to figure out who the school nurse is. And so I was wondering if there was a way that we could redirect it to maybe our school list where they could choose their school from that drop down, and we can make sure that our nurse is included in the faculty and staff page of that, or if there's something else that we could do so that it's easy for our parents to find the school nurse's information so that they can have their questions answered.
Mr. Burstead?
Yeah, we'll look into that. I believe Nashville.gov just got redesigned, so there's some broken links out there, so we'll take a look at that and try to make sure it's the right link. But there was at one point a health.gov, on the health department website, a listing of the school nurses.
Yeah, no, it's not there anymore, so thank you. That's good to know. Make sure that's everything. All right, I think that's all I had. Thank you.
All right, Mrs. Elrod.
Excuse me, thank you. Okay, so my first question is going to be about the nurses. How many nurse vacancies do we currently have?
Dr. Springer, can you recall how many vacancies we currently have?
Excuse me.
Yes, thank you for your question. At the last count, we had about 54 nurse vacancies. That number tends to be adjusted by the day. As Dr. Battle mentioned earlier about the challenges that we have with retaining nurses and recruiting nurses.
It's my I remember us all talking about many times that those are hired and retained by the Metro Health Department, and we are doing some additional work with them to help recruit and retain those staff. Have we found anything being particularly successful because we have such a high number of vacancies and it's an important role?
There is such a demand right now on health professionals that the strategies we once thought would help recruit and retain our nurses are not proving to be as successful that as we once thought they would be, but we continue to be innovative and strategizing with the health department around what they're hearing and what the needs will be in order to recruit nurses to MNPS. But it continues to be a struggle just because of the demand and the strain placed on our health professionals right now.
Sure. I mean, hospitals and other medical locations are having difficulty maintaining that staff as well. When that staff is not available to do the appropriate quarantine processes and mapping, who does that back up for them?
So while we have a number of vacancies in our schools, every school still is assigned a nurse. And so while they might not physically be in the building, if there's a need for contact tracing, they collect that information through the school team and they still begin that process. So again, every school has a nurse who will do the, respond to the questions, do the quarantining, so on and so forth. It is a coordinated effort. I mean, everybody's having to pitch in right now, getting information from our teachers, our principals, following up and reaching out as necessary. But again, we're very fortunate to have the partnership with the health department to have nurses in our schools who are truly leading the effort itself.
Sure. we are, again, I apologize for clearing my throat. We are very lucky to have those nurses and being able to at least have the number that can be assigned to each school, as that's much better than we have had in the past. Though we do have a low number of not only cases, but quarantines. I understand that it's going to be increasingly difficult for those nurses, particularly if they are assigned to multiple schools. So I just wanted to make sure that we had an understood process of who does that in case of their absence. My other question, oh, there we go. My other question is in light of public participation and the asking for better recognition and identification of gifted students. In response to our MAP assessments, I know we've talked about it many times, whether it's been in committee or on the board floor, but I just want to make sure, particularly because there was so much discussion earlier today about that. In response to our MAP assessments, what kind of supports are activated in response of looking at those in our data meetings? What kind of supports can be provided to students, whether it's gifted or talented or not? What is the smorgasbord of things that can be done?
Dr. Bellamy is approaching the podium to respond about our structure process in response to the data we received and meeting the needs of our students.
Sure. As it relates specifically to enrichment or identification for gifted services, you'll recall Matt Nelson's presentation, where there's a universal screening that happens, right? And that can be a first stage. Of course, there's other ways that a child could be pulled out for that screening, including parent request. But then the process of what we'll refer to response to intervention framework, right? The RTI squared framework we refer to as MTSS here. Our first round of MTSS meetings actually are going to happen next week, where each quadrant, each tier will come with their school team and will receive a variety of different resources and supports and collaboration as it relates to behavior, SEL, and academics. But that process kicks off at the school level when the school team, their school psychologists sit around and look at results and determine what students are in needs of what services. So that it can be delivered through interventions or through enrichment if you have a child that's identified as being significantly above the general scores. Right?
And in those, in those meetings, we are not just considering their scores, but also their growth scores within those decisions and supports.
So you're not going to look at any one data point as the whole story, right? You're looking at the child holistically and determining what level of services they may or may not need based on a variety. And that universal screening is oftentimes just the first element that will be raised. You bring teachers into that conversation, school psychologists is part of that team, the administrative team is part of that conversation, and you really look at each child and make every student known, right? And you're going to diagnose each children based on their data, their needs, and that classroom teacher is oftentimes going to have anecdotal data that is far more meaningful than just one data point in and of itself, right? And so it's all part of a collaborative process where they're going to discuss children on that level. And oftentimes for your students receiving enrichment, it's going to have to be significantly more than just a screening data point. You'll see students in need of enrichment in a variety of ways as a classroom teacher.
Yeah, and a little contrary to what we've heard a bit of, we are continuing to expand our gifted and talented services, our supports, our teachers on the ground, and our commitment to schools have been, you identify the students, right, and we will make sure that the supports are available for them. And so we don't have a cap on students we want to serve through our gifted and talented or through our advanced academics or EPSO programs.
So I want to make sure that we're clear. When we do our MAP assessments or data meetings, those are not the only time that your student can be assessed or recognized, whether it's needing supports, a gifted and talented, or additional MTSS supports.
That's correct.
Just want to make sure we're clear on that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, Mrs. Player-Peters.
In your report, you mentioned about uploading the MAP data into the dashboard. Yeah. So what's the average turnaround time? Is it like 3 weeks, 2 weeks? I mean, I have no idea, but just as parents can start looking for after the kids take it, even after the makeup, as we start that process.
Thank you. I'll invite Dr. Changus up to talk about the question. Dr. Changus, if you didn't hear it, was the typical normal timeline of turnaround of data from the time a student assesses to it appearing in the personalized student
It's
dashboard?
about 1 week. We did not upload the data till after the final makeup exams on Friday. The data was pulled on over the weekend, and some of my team members are pushing the data into our systems, and on the IT side, there's a little bit of cleanup that occurs, but if not by the end of this week, by the first of next week, we anticipate it will be live.
Great, thank you.
All right, Mr. Little?
Ms. Elrod sparked a really good discussion. So we talked about the universal screening, the RTI, MTSS. What do we call this process in which we identify students based on the MAP scores and the interventions?
We refer to addressing student needs as MTSS as a whole, so the multi-tiered systems of support. If you look at the state's manual, they refer to it oftentimes as RTI, response to intervention, or RTI squared, response to intervention and instruction. So we use the MTSS umbrella to describe academic interventions, behavioral interventions, social emotional interventions, and really all parts of the child holistically that way, right? So your MTSS team could be discussing one student's needs in a behavioral setting, while the next student's needs is purely academical, or academic, not academical. And then you could have a student that requires both, right? That they need some behavior interventions in order to access academic services the way they need.
Okay. And so in a perfect world, after you give this assessment, how do we work with the parents to communicate that down, your recommendations, their feedback? How does that then work?
So
we can talk offline, but this seems like this is a whole process and trying to figure out, and we don't have to take up time here, but I'd be interested to know.
I think it's a great question, and I'll give you a very brief answer this evening, right? And I think when you see the pyramid we've shown before about our MTSS structures, and the public and parents in particular being our partners in understanding that, the personalized student dashboard is a great, huge first step in that connection, right? But that process should be ongoing. It shouldn't happen just after a universal screening, which happens 3 times a year. It shouldn't just happen at report card time, which happens at the end of each quarter, or at progress report time. Ideally, that's an ongoing conversation. Ideally, it's parents logging into Schoology, to Infinite Campus, to the personalized student dashboard, reaching out to our teachers on a regular basis and understanding what's happening in the classroom, and an ongoing connection. But a two-way connection, right? It's not just sitting and waiting for a teacher to communicate to you or the school to communicate to you, but also proactively communicating you and your child's needs to the school. So I guess the short answer is, ideally, it doesn't stop. And it's not just after those tests, but oftentimes those tests tend to trigger more communications that way and updates that way. But in an ideal space, it would be going on pretty well continually.
And last question, how many, before we created the personalized student dashboard, how many parents was the platform there for them to log in to see where their children were? And if so, if no, how many parents were actually going in to log in to find out? I don't know if you have that.
Yeah, so the Infinite Campus historically has housed grades, like basic information. So the personalized student dashboard is an expansive view of students, all of our focus outcomes, everything from academics to discipline to graduation requirements. So it is a more robust picture of a student's progress. And of course, our long-term goal here is to create more of that two-way communication where parents and students can, like, I want to read that a student is interested. They want to know if their child is gifted, or if we have more access to advanced academic, like all of that information is what's in our ideal space we will start to get in the personalized dashboard, and we can be responsive to. So it is a more robust platform for families, and we were intentional about it going into the Infinite Campus portal so that we're not sending our families into various systems with different logins and passwords. We wanted a one-stop shop for parents to be able to go and access that information.
Okay. So definitely last question. So what is our goal to increase the number? Because even when I look at the ESSER plan responses, like it may be 98,000 and we got 132 responses. How do we create a robust plan, whether it's meeting them at the car line, at the tech center, individual meetings, to really help parents get on board and understand the process?
Dr. Bellamy.
A timely question, Mr. Riddle. Our principals will be briefed on it first thing in the morning, so I don't want to spoil too much right now. But the schools have been given their letters to push out with progress reports last week. I think we're at about 23% of our parents right now. I believe Paul, thumbs up, is that ish?
A few weeks ago, we were at 23.
Okay. But we will start a concerted effort starting tomorrow morning and working with our schools. We're going to run that window through parent-teacher conferences because that's a natural time when parents are coming in or through teams either way. You've got a captive audience right there, and so it's a great time to connect them. And ultimately, again, the goal is to create that ongoing cycle of feedback, right? And that's the way in which we'll do it. So we've got a concerted effort starting tomorrow that we'll be rolling out through the end of October with our parent-teacher conferences being the culmination in that, when we hope to report back much, much higher numbers to you.
Smiling through the mask. I just don't want to take it off and get scorned.
You can tell through your eyes.
Sure, Mrs. Tyler?
Yeah, I also know that as a parent of student who's been in MNPS for years and years, that when their MAP scores come, even if before there was a portal, we always got that information sent home in their folders, and it told you what they scored in reading and math, and it told you where that put them on which tier as far as intervention, and it explained what each intervention was. So that information should have already been coming home physically, in hand, and I know sometimes it's hard to get everything from the school to your hands, but
Yeah, that's
but
correct.
that is also another layer to trying to get that information to the parents in the best possible way.
I think hearing you say that, we just got to realize that just hasn't worked, and that's why I can appreciate this plan, because just sending it home, and parents really don't understand it. They don't, and so what he's saying now, I think, adds an additional layer where it is partnership. They have a plan to really reach out to parents, because just sending it home is never worked.
I'm just letting you know that that's also been happening. Because
Okay.
you're asking how were parents getting into it and how are they receiving it, and they spoke about online, and I just wanted to make sure we knew that it's more than just one way that we've tried to reach out to families. And for some families, it works extremely well, and it doesn't work for others, just like an online portal is going to work extremely well for some families and not as great for others. So I think we need to have something available in all the different formats so that we can reach everybody at where their strength is and at what is going to work best for them.
But I was just saying right
Yeah.
now the numbers are dismal, and we got to add in the extra layers to get it out there.
That's what we're doing.
All right, do we have any other questions? We have, Mrs. Bush?
How many kids have opted in for COVID testing right now? Because I know the permission slips went out. How many do we have so far?
Let's see, Dr. Springer, do you have that number? Sean, do you have the total number of students who've opted in thus far through the student parent handbook?
I don't have the exact number, but it was around 67% of people that had already provided their permission forms, of which that was about 10% as of Thursday of last week. So we did another push, and we pushed back the deadline to try to get more people to fill out the permission forms. So I'll get you the exact number. I can look at the numbers.
Okay. And then my second question, I know that daily we get COVID reports, positive cases from our students and our teachers. How are we getting those numbers? How are they reporting it? Is it going through are they going out getting tested, since we only have like that 10% that are opted in? How are we getting these numbers?
That comes from the health department via our nurses. And yes, that number is only reported if there is a confirmed positive test.
And they can come from going into urgent care, they can go into, because I'm trying to understand all these numbers we
That's
get every
correct.
day. So they can go to other outside sources, and then it goes right into health department.
That's correct.
Health department then reports it to the schools.
Yes, or it could happen multiple ways. Sometimes the parents call us and report a positive case, but the majority of them are coming through our nurses via our health department of confirmed positive COVID tests. But again, these are all positive COVID tests, and not just the word of mouth for our student cases and also for our staff cases.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, because I know we get such a laundry list every day of so many positive cases. So I just want to know where it's coming from, because when everybody's not opted in for testing. So I just wanted to kind of make sure I was clear on where it came from.
Let me be clear. Those numbers are not from testing or random testing in our schools. These are confirmed cases where a student has been symptomatic, been a close contact, whether they be at home or school, and they've been tested in that manner. But the numbers we have right now are not due to our testing program or random testing across our schools.
Okay, thanks.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, we will move on to board discussion. MNPS Security Board Policy 5.501, complaints and grievances. But to be clear, the policy, yes, the board policy is about complaints and grievances. So I move that we review policy 5.501 and any suggestions for updating that policy during a governance meeting, and then bring it to the full board floor once the entire board has had a chance to review it. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion around moving the policy so we have a chance to review whatever suggestions are made around it in a governance meeting, and then moving it back to the board floor for full review? All right, go ahead. Yes, open for discussion. So go right ahead, Mrs. Masters.
We've already spoken about having a governance committee meeting to talk about some other policies. So is what you're suggesting to also add this to that governance committee meeting?
Yes, so every policy that we review comes through governance policy committee meeting so that we can look at it, ask questions of our attorney, and then we bring it to the board floor to vote on it. So that's just what I'm moving that we do.
Okay, and so then should we do that? And then it would be spoken about on the board floor, like after that, like should we decide to make changes or?
Yes.
Well, I mean, and governance committee is an open meeting too, right?
This committee is an open meeting, but even when we discuss a policy and governance, it still always comes to the board floor. It just comes to governance first so that we have time to review it so that we're not sitting here reading through suggestions as we are being asked to vote on it. Because we typically have to have questions of our attorney to make sure that whatever updates we're offering or suggestions that we're that we're discussing are in line with Tennessee code and, to the state law.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Mrs. Bush?
Okay, so I just want to make it very clear right now. I never asked for any changes to the policy for it to go back to a governance item for any changes. This was put on the agenda, and any board member could have had an opportunity to go back and review the policy. That's the reason why the policy was put on the agenda. So if there was any question, because I'm not recommending anything to be changed by regarding the policy. It was to discuss questions surrounding the MNPS security and the process and procedure that took place. So it doesn't have anything to do with changing any type of governance. So I just want to make that clear.
Well, thank you for that.
If that's, I want to know a protocol because I'm not asking for any changes, no changes.
Certainly, so
I
thank you for
still
that
want to make
update.
sure that it is coming, if you're wanting to defer it so that everybody can have a chance to review the policy, that is perfectly fine. But I am not asking for any type of changes or any type of alterations to this policy. Nothing dealing with governance. This is only what's in place right now and what the questions are surrounding the MNPS, Security Department, and the process and procedures surrounding this policy. That is what this is supposed to be about. But if you're saying you want it to be reviewed, but I want it back on the board floor for discussion.
Just as I told you via text and via email, and then when we spoke on the phone, that because every policy is reviewed and discussed in governance, that is why I'm asking it to be there. So with that, all in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So
I'm sorry, Mrs. Masters.
When we talk about this policy and governance, will we have the opportunity to talk about in the context of security issues and ask, our attorney questions within that context as well?
To be honest, that's why I wanted it in governance so that we could have Ms. Roberge and so that we could all understand whatever Mrs. Bush was trying to get accomplished. So, Mrs. Roberge or Dr. Sevier?
It has been the practice of this board to address policies first through the governance committee, and then the second reading by your own policy. Policies require 2 readings, and that second reading occurs generally on the consent agenda because you've already dealt with sort of hammering out all the questions and nuances. If you wanted to have a discussion about how the policy is being implemented, I think that's probably not within the realm of the scope of the governance committee itself.
Could I ask a more pointed question, Dr. Severe and Mrs. Masters, for Ms. Roberge? If it is dealing with personnel, a specificity, I mean, how do we handle that? I'm assuming we cannot, just how do we handle that?
I want to make sure I understand your question.
So I have a lot of questions.
Okay.
That's why we all went round robin the past week trying to understand exactly what the request was for the agenda. And that's why I asked that we talk about it in governance, where we could have you hash it out for a long period of time and really understand what Mrs. Bush was trying to get accomplished. She would not respond to me more specifically, so I'm not sure if maybe she'll respond to you and help you kind of flesh out where it should go and how we discuss it.
So right now, the motion is to refer the complaints and grievances policy to the governance committee. To echo what Dr. Severe said, that is typically used to discuss if there should be any changes to the policy. It appears that the confusion is coming from a lack of clarity on what this particular agenda item is about. And so because there is an action item on the floor, it would be my recommendation that that action item be voted on and see what the outcome of that vote is.
And then how would we address any questions Ms. Bush had for her original request?
It could go on for discussion again. I'm not certain that I'm clear on what the request is. And so it may be, Ms. Bush, if you could clarify that request to shape the discussion so that it's not just a free-ranging. Again, if this is about policy, that is typically the board's purview. Individual employment matters typically rest with the director of schools.
Okay. So could you give me?
Sure. So I think there's a couple of different options on how this can proceed. First, a vote on the motion that's on the table, which is, does the complaints and grievances policy need to go to governance for review? That's the motion. From there, the board, there could be another motion on what type of discussion to have, or if there should be a discussion. That could be the end of business, and the meeting could move to announcements.
Okay, so I can either rescind my motion, because it doesn't sound like she wants to make a suggestion, even though it is listed as a policy discussion, but she doesn't want to change anything about the policy. So I can rescind it, or we can just flat out vote against reviewing it at a future governance meeting.
Correct.
All right, we have a question from Mrs. Elrod. Go ahead, and then I'll call for the vote.
I have a point of clarification with Fran. I just want to make sure I understand. So Fran has been clear. She doesn't want to change the policy, but she does want us to review basically the implementation of that policy in this specific instance. Because it's a review of that policy's process and procedures, though it's no change to that policy, it does feel like it would be, once again, it's not a change, true, but it would potentially have a discussion about changes to it as a board discussion. So would that fit in that process of having it in the governance meeting? That's my point of.
Hold on, were you asking Mrs. Roberge?
I'm asking Ms. Roberge real quick. If that's the perceived understanding of that there's maybe not a change to that direct policy, but a change of how that policy is implemented, does that go to governance?
Potentially.
Okay.
I think it's still a little unclear on what is actually being discussed. Again, if it is changes to the policy or anything of that nature, it is appropriate for the governance committee. And so it may be based on this discussion that there should be a governance committee meeting to discuss if there's any changes desired by not just Ms. Bush, but all of the board.
Okay. And then Mrs. Bush, you had a question or comment?
So I guess I'm going to have to make myself clear again. I am not trying to change anything about the policy, period. Does everybody understand that?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not trying to change a policy. I'm not trying to amend any of the policies, not this policy. I'm not doing that. I want to have a discussion surrounding the policy not being followed. Questions about that. That's what I'm doing.
All right, so
It has
Mrs.
nothing to do with
Roberge,
that.
is that a discussion that we engage in around personnel, either following a policy or not?
So while my tenure has not been particularly long, that is not generally how the board operates. Whether or not the director is following policy would come up within her evaluation. And so that may be a better space for this to live in.
Okay. So as the motion stands, it still wouldn't fall under the purview of the governance committee then?
Again, based on Ms. Bush's representations, it does not appear so.
Okay, so what would be your suggestion if Mrs. Bush wanted to support a change in, I don't know, compliance? Does she speak directly to Dr. Battle? Because it sounds like that is not something that the rest of the board engages in. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what would be an appropriate next step for Mrs. Bush if that's something that she wants to address or have addressed?
There was a lot there. And so I think the first step, again, is to take care of the pending motion. Second step is, by policy, there is a directive that board members reach out to the director of schools on employment matters. I can't cite the policy. It's 1.4, 1 point something. And there also could be a board vote on if this is something that the board wishes to continue to debate and discuss and have brought up.
Okay. Okay, so we'll go ahead and at least close out this motion. So again, my
first step, yep.
Okay, so again, my motion was to review policy 5.501 and any suggestions for updating it during a governance committee meeting before bringing it to the full board. It was seconded. All in favor, raise your hand. All right, all opposed? All right, it moves. I'll abstain just because it was my motion and it just feels stupid to vote against it. I should have rescinded it, but thank you. All right, so with that, now I can open it back up for motions or for a closing of the discussion? Mrs. Roberge or Dr. Severe?
That was the action item related to the discussion. There could be another motion made that I had alluded to previously, or that the discussion could proceed. It would be at the chair's discretion.
Okay. Well, is there a motion before we move forward with
What's the
discussion?
motion?
There is not one.
I move that we move forward with the discussion around the policy.
All right, so he's moving that we move forward with the discussion around the policy. Do I have a second? Can you restate it? Just restate it into the mic, Mr. Little.
Okay, I'm sorry. I make a motion that we talk about the board discussion, which is
The board discussion or the board policy?
MNPS Security Board Policy 5-501.
Okay, repeat that one more time, the whole thing. I'm sorry.
Okay. I make a motion that we have a discussion about board discussion, MNPS Security Board Policy.
Okay, do we have a second? All right, it has been moved by Mr. Little, seconded by Mrs. Bush. I'll open the floor for discussion.
What would be the appropriate?
I'm sorry, okay, Mrs. Masters?
Yeah,
Go
oh,
ahead.
sorry, I'm sorry. Oh, so what would be the appropriate way or format for us to get an update on current, the status of the security discussion? Or is it done?
I guess this is really a question for Mrs. Roberge or Dr. Battle if you wanted to chime in, but
So the motion was for a discussion amongst the board members, and so the appropriate way to proceed here would be for the board members to have a discussion on the topic as moved.
So, I want to make this clear for the rest of the board and for the viewing public that between about 4 or 5 of us, board staff, board attorney, myself and Ms. Bush, we went round and round with TSBA to understand exactly what the request was, how it should be listed, and then how we could support it. So that's why this seems a bit confusing, because there just was not any specificity. So this is, again, a discussion, since that was how it was asked to be listed. Mrs. Elrod.
Thank you. It is not my desire to have a discussion without information being provided. We've had a discussion previously, and there was not information provided in advance of it. I think that prolonged the discussion, and it frankly was not very effective. That was my hope in us moving it to a committee, was allowing us to be better prepared, as it's not a change to the policy, which we all could quickly and easily access at this current time, but it's about more specifics of how that has been followed or not followed in individual or group settings. And I think that that deserves some respect of having the information to us so we can review it in advance, and of course have a more robust conversation that respects the potential real issue that's at hand. So I don't really want to have a discussion without having materials, ideally in advance, but particularly at this time. And so that would be my concern with having a discussion on the board floor, like the last time where there was not time to review it and to give it the appropriate amount of what we're supposed to do for board education and preparation.
Mrs. Bush?
Let me just be clear. Every board member got all the information from Mr. Martinez. There was nothing that you all have not received to review. So let's be clear about that. Every single thing that Mr. Martinez, Officer Martinez, who is now gone, who left our district, is no longer with us, who tried desperately to get our attention, we all got the same information, and we got it. So you've had time to review the information. Secondly, if you had a question about the policy, you all had time to review the policy because it was on the agenda, just like anything else that we want to review and we want to ask questions about. So it has never been anything that you are not privy to. So you all had the information. So it's nothing that you don't have. You have Officer Martinez, every single email that he sent to the board regarding his ask for an appeal. He also sent follow-up emails that everyone received. And if you didn't receive it, please let me know, because we were all on the email. So tell me what it is that you have not received.
Go ahead, Mrs. Elrod.
I'm so sorry. No, my response to that would be, if it's for information that we have already received, there's no new information here, then I don't know why we'd be spending time to discuss information that's not new to us. If it's purely information that we've received, and it's a personnel issue that is being taken care of, but again, there's no new information and there's no policy changes, then that does not seem that it is a useful time for the board, as I will trust our colleagues that they have read those emails as they have come, be that from him or from legal or from HR or whomever. But if there's truly no new information, then yes, I really don't understand why we would have a new information or discourse about this. And that's just my statement.
All right, Mrs. Masters.
So I'm going to form this as a question, understanding that it is at the chair's discretion, since this is a discussion, to decide whether or not you want to invite staff members to answer the question. But here's where I am. So in reference to policy 5.501, page 2, lines 17, 18, and 19, that allows for an employee to appeal a decision to the board by making a written request to a complaint manager, and then those materials are promptly forwarded to the board. I, at this point, have not received such materials, and so my question, if it seems appropriate within this forum for it to be answered, is I think we have 30 days from the point of receiving it. I'm not sure how long they have to give it to us. Anyway, is there such an appeal in process at this point? Should the board be expecting to receive those materials and then exercise that 30-day. So I feel that's kind of the only thing policy-related that I can come up with that would, I think, help shed some light on where we are with this in relation to the board.
We can ask Mrs. Bush.
Yes, that's exactly where I was going with the discussion, because we have not received that information from HR that we should have received based on the appeal by Mr. Martinez and 7 other officers. We have not received that information. So that's what the discussion was going to be around, is ask those questions. Why haven't we received that information, so that we can review the information? So that's where we were going with this, given that time to talk about it. And I will be able to articulate that information so that everyone will be clear about what was not followed in the policy that we should have been receiving from their appeal, because they went through an appeal process and it was denied. And the next opportunity was to have the board, they appeal it to the board, which they did, file the appeal, which we have not received anything.
I appreciate the clarity now, Mrs. Bush. This is why we were going around with emails and calls and texts to try to understand what it is you were trying to get done. So the board can only discuss so much without, at the very least, leaning into our director who oversees all of the staff. I would, again, recommend that we, at the very least, tap into Dr. Battle and not just leave it as a board discussion where we are moving off of hearsay versus concrete fact, or at the very least, FOIA requests. Mrs. Roberge, do you have any thoughts or suggestions on how to move forward with this new information that has come to light about what the intended goal of the agenda request is? I'm sorry, I don't know if the full board is not up here. Go right ahead, Ms. Roberge.
Again, this is supposed to be a board discussion and not a back and forth
with staff.
And so as the board's attorney, I would recommend that the discussion take place. If there is specific information requested, listing that out would be helpful.
Thank you. I wish we could have gotten that information before tonight. So with that,
I still have a statement to make.
I'm sorry, say it again?
I have a statement to make.
Go right ahead, Mrs. Bush.
To what you just said, there's no hearsay. There's never been a hearsay about getting clarification on where we are with this particular situation with the MNPS Security Department. Everyone knows right here in this table all the issues, the grievances, the mounting grievances and complaints. We currently have 33 officers employed, 33, which we're down so many. We couldn't even put one officer in every school. My major concern is security around these children. And if our officers are still not in getting their due diligence and getting their fair opportunity to have some type of justice, and we continue to try to spearhead or backpedal to try to stop it from happening, because we have an issue here. We have a security issue here, and we have a issue of our children having the support they need for safety. So we have a problem here. We have a serious problem with security. And so they went through the process, and some of these officers are my constituents, so they have come and they have done their due diligence by following the right complaints and going through the right steps. So there's no hearsay. This is all information that I wanted to present, and this is where we are. So that's what my statement is that we continue to do this every single time when it comes up for discussion, if there's something coming up, when it's very important for our kids.
Now, Ms. Roberge, I do want to make clear that when we specifically asked Ms. Bush about this, that we discussed the idea that we've already hashed out the conversation around security, and that will move forward under Dr. Battle. We can have discussions at during director's evaluation, or even with Mrs. Player Peters, who was working as an advocacy liaison with the security guards. So with that, she is out of line because we've already had that discussion. Now, if she wants to bring another discussion or even updates to a policy, that is appropriate. And is there anything that I'm missing?
Yeah, you're missing everything. It doesn't have anything
I was not asking you, Mrs. Bush.
Okay.
Go right ahead, Mrs. Roberge.
Number 14 through 21.
Go right
an
ahead, Mrs.
appeal.
Roberge.
This is where we are, and this was the question surrounding the MNPS Security Department. This is a totally different.
Go right ahead, Mrs. Roberge.
Don't you do that again.
Given the contentious nature of the discussion, it may be more productive for there to be a motion on if this warrants continued recurring conversation, so that the issues that Ms. Bush is raising can be addressed. The issues that Ms. Elrod are raising can be addressed. That may be a productive way to move forward.
All right, then I will entertain a motion. We do need to vote on Mr. Little's current motion. Can you repeat that, Mr. Little, so we may vote on it?
I make a motion that, okay, been getting the mic cut off tonight. Make a motion that we have a discussion about the MNPS Security Board policy, complaints and grievances.
All right, it was moved and seconded. All in favor, please raise your hand.
What? I thought we just did have that discussion. I thought we were having that discussion.
Yeah, but the motion was on the board floor. So, again, we have to close out the motion. So, please raise your hand if you agree.
Discussion is over, so
All right, so we have 2 in favor. All opposed, please raise your hand. Only 4, so motion fails. So we continue the discussion.
Isn't a motion on the floor anymore?
His motion was to discuss. So considering,
yeah.
oh, I'm so sorry, you're right.
Yes, there's
So now we need a motion to move forward in some way.
Come on, somebody.
I know what I want, but I don't know how to make it a motion.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Masters.
I know what I want, but I don't know how to make it a motion.
Just try. We all trying out here. I got you.
All right, Mrs. Elrod.
Maybe Rachel Anderson.
My motion is that any outstanding materials that are to be delivered by the board, a list of those materials of outstanding, okay. My motion is that a list of outstanding materials is provided to the director of schools and to the board. And in response to the appeal that we have not received information for.
All right, do we have a second?
Oh, yes, that is. Is my microphone working?
All right, Mrs. Masters seconds.
Yeah, I'll second that.
All right.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Yeah.
I'll try my best. I'm so sorry, guys. I stumbled over that. My motion is that a list of materials that are needed for the appeal that has not, that we have not received materials from, that list of materials is provided to the director of schools and to the board.
That's not exactly right.
And I'm being stopped.
Just as a point of clarity, there isn't a current appeal. The letter that was submitted was submitted by Mr. Martinez.
Right.
And Mr. Martinez is no longer an employee.
That's true.
Okay, so I'm sorry, if I could clarify. So this was listed for one person, for a personnel.
There were multiple names listed, but not all of those individuals have grievances. The policy doesn't recognize group grieving necessarily.
Okay.
It is my understanding that Dr. Barnes sent a letter to Mr. Martinez stating that there is not a current appeal. So that is my understanding of where the facts currently are.
Okay.
I rescind my motion.
Mrs. Bush?
I'm going to make it very clear on the board floor, and I'm going to make it clear for the public. All you're doing is covering this up. There hasn't been an appeal, and they have done it in writing. It is not one person, and Mr. Martinez is not along with us, but there's 7 other officers that signed on to that appeal. And it was not just one specific. It included what was in 5.501. So I want to make it very clear on this board floor for the public viewing, that this is nothing but a cover-up, because they went through the right channels. And it's
Mrs.
not
Bush,
just
I
Mr.
asked that you address this to Dr. Battle.
I am speaking with
I hear you, but
Melissa
I asked you to address
She
Dr.
is right
Battle
here,
because
so I'm able to talk to
Mrs.
her.
Roberge, please take a seat because all stances and questions should be addressed either to myself or to Dr. Battle. So try again.
Again, I'm going to make it very clear. She can sit down. I don't care about that because at this point, this is what y'all do. This is nothing but a complete cover-up. And I'm going to make it clear on the board floor, and I'm going to make sure it's clear for the public. We have a MNPS security problem. They have gone through the proper process and steps to get their appeal. They have gone through everything they could possibly do to exercise their rights for justice for their department, and it has failed to have some type of solution. No resolution. And they have gone through the right proper channels, and it doesn't matter if Mr. Martinez is not here. You have 7 other officers that have signed on to this appeal. And you all have decided to find a way to manipulate it so that it cannot be, the appeal cannot go through, just as they couldn't even get an outside investigation, like you said. So we can stop it now, but I want to make sure I was clear on this board floor of what y'all are doing. It's good.
All right,
But I want to make sure I was
Mrs.
clear.
Elrod.
I'm taking another stab at a motion. All right. My motion is that Fran directs her concerns and stated needs to Dr. Battle and follow up to the unapproved appeal.
All right, is there a second?
Say it again one more time.
My motion, okay, point of order, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mrs. Player Peters. Can you speak into the microphone just to make sure everybody hears you?
So I think there's a clarifying question that has to happen. Is there an official appeal? There has been correspondence for requests of appeal, but has there been an appeal to truly process for an aspect? I think I'm going to stop there.
That's what I want.
We're all confused, so you're not by yourself, okay?
Well, I didn't want to complicate it, so I think we need to start there. Is there a formal appeal?
I don't mean you.
There's been correspondence. There has been correspondence about the security guard issue. The question is there a formal appeal? Let's stop there. Full stop.
Well, we can't address that because it has been determined that this is a board discussion. So this is something that we as individual board members either ask directly to Dr. Battle and then have her bring to the board if a change to a policy or governance needed to happen. But
So can I offer a friendly amendment to Ms. Elrod's?
Please.
So
Yes, Mrs.
what you
Player-Peters.
said, what was your,
My motion is that Fran directs her concerns and stated needs to Dr. Battle and follow up to the unapproved appeal.
so I would make a motion that Ms. Bush directs her concerns and stated needs to Dr. Battle, the chair, and the chair of, do you have a personnel committee?
no. We have an advocacy committee. And frankly, Mrs. Player Peters, you were acting as a liaison, so you can be included. We can CC you on anything.
What do you say?
Yes.
Board discussion. I don't want, it's board discussion. Can you withdraw your motion?
I withdraw my motion.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint, I make a motion to ask the chair to appoint a ad hoc personnel committee. Ad hoc.
Mrs. Player Peters, you were already assigned as the ad hoc committee.
Okay. So.
I mean, when we had the first discussion around
Yes,
security.
you're right. You are right. Okay.
We did that.
So I make a motion that Mrs. Bush gives her stated concerns to me, to stated personnel committee, to have a discussion about this issue. That's it, full stop.
Hold on.
That was, oh yeah, I was trying to amend Ms. Elrod's motion.
Okay, so.
No.
So just so we're clear though, we cannot have board members talking about personnel just because of FERPA laws and because that's not under our purview. So it has to be worded in a way that still falls under state law that does not take.
Correct.
Yes, it
Yeah.
does not
understand.
strip the director of her duties. So, as when we originally began this conversation around security, the first go-round, you began to liaise between between the union and some other members. I separately had conversations, so we got the ball rolling. If your suggestion is that we pick that back up, or that you want to have conversation with them to make sure that they understand appellate processes.
Ms. Buggs, can I make a suggestion?
Yes, please.
As a first step, since there seems to be confusion on what has happened with Mr. Martinez's letters and what the responses were, I will work with Dr. Barnes so that you all have that information, along with the rationale and the procedural posture of these appeals. After that information is received, Ms. Bush, or any other board member, if they would like to put it back on the agenda for discussion, it can be tailored in that way. And if the board would like to discuss it, the board can discuss it. And if they would prefer not to discuss it, they can do that as well. So if that is just a suggestion for how to proceed to kind of address some of the confusion.
Now that we've had some clarity about what the goal of the agenda request was, yes.
Correct.
Okay. So,
Does that require a motion?
Yeah.
Mrs. Roberge? She says no.
Frida's motion is still on the floor, right?
I think you could also at this point just close the discussion,
Yeah.
unless there was an objection.
I withdraw my motion.
Okay, so the motion has been withdrawn. We will close the discussion and move on to announcements. All right, we'll begin with our student board members who have had a riveting first day.
Oh, my God.
If you don't have an announcement, that's okay.
And please, yes, please know that you can pass if you'd like. Ebenezer will begin on your end.
Pull your microphone down.
I don't really have any announcements, but I would just like to take this time to, thank all of you for especially giving me a warm welcome, me and both Angela and I. And I think from what we've seen today, it's evident that we're going to be learning a lot, especially in the next 2 years. And I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. That's pretty much it.
Thank you very much. All right, Mrs. Pupo Walker.
Want to congratulate Glendale on being a reward school. I want to let everybody know September 17th, this Friday, is Future Boroughs Night at Hillsborough for the football game. All middle school or elementary schoolers can come. And letting everybody know to tell your friends in the class of 2022 that the Tennessee Promise application is open. It's time to start applying. Thank you.
All right, Mrs. Bush.
I just want to make sure that I'm clear. I understand, my announcement is that the policy 5.501 was not followed, period. There was a formal complaint and appeal that was sent. It doesn't matter if it was a one-pager, two-pager, a form appeal says what a form appeal does, and that is state your grievances and what your ask is. And I just want to make sure that, once again, the viewing audience have witnessed this tonight and understand this is what the board does. This is what happens when we're trying to get some type of solution when it comes to our employees who have become deficient in their work because of poor leadership. And this is the result of why we're losing officers. This is the result of why our students are in such harm's way, because we continue as a board to ignore the problems that these departments are having, which highly impacts our children. But we can keep this up, and God forbid that nothing happens to our children, because I want to make this sure that I am very firm, that I pray that nothing happens, but our children are highly impacted by the decision and that these leaders, the poor leadership that we have in these departments. And that's the reason why we're suffering. And that's the reason why we're not going to be able to be successful as a district, because this is what we do. And this is another example of what is happening. And everybody tonight got a chance to see it. Exactly. And we should be ashamed of ourselves. Ashamed. You can fight me all day long, but at the end of the day, the results are the results. The results will be the results. And I don't have to say no more because it always comes true. But God forbid and nothing happens to these children because we have failed them. Because we amongst ourselves want to be catty and try to figure out a way to hide and cover up. This is what we do. That's why we'll never move forward. But my care is for these children. Whatever y'all personal agenda is, it's not mine. I'm going to continue to fight for these students. I'm going to continue to be a voice, and I will not be silenced. Even when you think you have an agenda to silence me, but it doesn't work. So I'm going to continue to do what I do. My compassion is for this district and for these students so that we can make sure that they're successful. And that's what I'm going to continue to do. So whatever y'all agenda is trying to silence me, it doesn't work. This is all recorded, and people will be able to see for themselves of who we are as far as the safety for our kids and academically how we're moving this district. And that's my announcement.
Mr. Little?
Yes, ma'am. I want to say next Tuesday, Ruby Major will be celebrating their designation as a 2020-2022 National PTO School of Excellence. And so we'll be doing that celebration next week. Next Saturday, September the 25th, I'll have a virtual District 4 community meeting with Ms. Patterson, who leads the CT work, some of the CT work at McGavick, and also Ben Bose, who is the chair of the McGavick Freshman Academy, just to get a chance to put out in the community great things that are happening at McGavick and then being able to answer any questions from parents. Lastly, had a really good meeting with some of the district staff. Shout out to Dr. Bellamy, Dr. Changus. I got a lot of clarity around the plans coupled with tonight. And I don't think Dr. Bellamy is here, but he is a man that has a lot of courage, and I can appreciate that. It was a breath of fresh air to just hear him talk about his vision for the district academically. So, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Elrod.
Thank you. All right, first I would like to recognize that it's College Week at Haywood Elementary and College and Career Month, not just a week, at John Overton High School. Additionally, both of these schools were just recognized this evening, in the director's report in response to their movement for needing additional supports. So congratulations to them, and thank you for continuing to do the good work and not just providing supports to our students, but to our students' families and really focusing on their whole child. Additionally, I would like to thank my colleagues for putting their faith in me again as vice chair of the board. Again, I know our desire is to have a professional working governance model, and I continue to look forward to us improving that and working on that throughout the upcoming year.
Mrs. Player-Peters.
Yes, I'd like to offer my condolences to Jermaine Norman's family. He passed away. He was a school bus driver here at Metro Schools. His wife was one of my classmates at Fisk University, and so I just want to offer my condolences to the Norman family. I know it's lost to have someone so young to be able to, who passed away and also had a great impact with his job here at MNPS, being a bus driver. Also, flu shots starting tomorrow are available for free tomorrow in my district at Glen Cliff Media Center. Hopefully, if my work schedule doesn't hold me up, I will be there tomorrow getting a flu shot. So if you go on the website, there's places from September 15th to October 28th to get your flu shot, hopefully so you can stay safe this winter. And then last about Need School, yay to Glen Cliff for exiting their status. They're on the video, woohoo. All right, I'm done.
Thank you. Mrs. Masters.
Thank you. So I want to first thank Lytton Middle School. I gave a book talk there today. They're recognizing September as National Literacy Month, and I got to share with them about a book that I really enjoyed called Clean Getaway by Nick Stone, and it's historical fiction, and I think they liked it. So it was really fun, and it was great to get into Lytton and see what's going on. I also wanted to mention that Maplewood High School is celebrating 4 years of the relationship with Ascension St. Thomas. They have a community health clinic there where they've been serving the community for 4 years. And I actually had the honor of touring that facility more than 4 years ago while it was still under construction. And so it's just really exciting to see that it is still thriving. And they'll be celebrating that Thursday morning. Also wanted to mention for any Hunters Lane parents that are still tuning in from home, that the parent academic advisory team is still seeking members. They meet 3 to 4 times a year virtually, and by emailing Principal Kessler, you can join that group. I want to thank NOAA's Academics Committee for meeting with me yesterday. I thought we had a really great discussion around advanced academics, a lot of the things they were talking about tonight, the intersection of that with SEL, and I'm also really excited that I'm going to have some stuff to share with them because it happens to be what we talked about in our last Teaching and Learning Committee meeting. So I've asked Dr. David Williams if he could share that information with me in some shareable form, some cleaned up form, so I can follow up with Noah about that. And last but definitely not least, I want to talk about the Parent Advisory Council and all of their amazing work. And they met on August 31st virtually, had more than 200 folks on that call, and I really need to thank MNPS Communications for sending out the information about that via email to all of our families. I think that really affected participation. This past Saturday, I joined the PAC members at the Downtown Public Library for a screening of the National Public Education Foundation's film, and then we had a discussion afterwards, and it was really exciting partnership with all those groups and with the library. And as BB mentioned during public comment, they'll be having 8 more screenings at library branches. The next one is in Bordeaux in October, and you can find information about that. But I encourage all of the board members to go to the library screening in your district because community members are there, and then you can talk about stuff, and it was neat. I felt like I was like back in a class having a discussion. It was fun. And then finally on September 28th at 4 p.m., right before our meeting, we will be having, it's an advisory council meeting in essence, but I will be then handing the floor over to our Parent Advisory Council, where they will be hosting a town hall style discussion featuring information about our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives and about our parent dashboard and data, with special guests from our data team and our DEI team to talk with the community about that. And I think it's a wonderful intersection of advocacy and the work that they're doing, because they're really more than just Parent Advisory Council, they're Parent Advocacy Council. And I love the direction that that's going. And I'm sorry I had so many announcements. I do need to also say, though, much appreciation to everyone on the board who reached out to me when we had a family tragedy. Recently, we lost my mother-in-law way too soon as a result of COVID, which she contracted even though she was fully vaccinated. So breakthrough cases are happening in our community. And if you are eligible to be vaccinated and you haven't yet been, please do, to help protect the others, the more vulnerable in our community. And I really appreciate my fellow board members and the members of the PAC for reaching out to me during that difficult time.
Thank you, Mrs. Masters. Mrs. Tyler?
I just wanted to remind everybody that MNPS has extended the due date for our required annual permission forms to this, from last Friday to this coming Friday, September 17th. So they should have either come home in a hard form at the very beginning of the school year, or you can go to permissions, and that is with an S, it is plural, permissions.mnps.org. And when you get there, you will need to have already signed up for Infinite Campus, because you have to enter the email that you use for Infinite Campus. And you will also need to know your child's school ID number so that you can complete the forms for your child. And it covers everything from if they're allowed to have media exposure, if they're allowed to share pictures of your child, to if they're allowed to do random testing for COVID on your child, if they're allowed to. So it's all the permissions for the school year. And you can choose to let the district know your thoughts on what you want and don't want for your child. So that is due this coming Friday. If you don't have the hard forms, again, you can go to permissions.mnps.org.
All right, new student board member, Angelique.
Thank you. First, I wanted to just say thank you to all of you for allowing me and Ebenezer this wonderful opportunity to get behind the scenes of what happens, especially in our own school district. My announcement would relate to another youth-led organization that I'm a part of, Mayor's Youth Council. We actually had our first in-person meeting yesterday, safely masked and distanced when possible. We are preparing for our annual Mayor's Youth Summit, and that's going to be on Wednesday, November 3rd, and that's open to any student and adult in the Metropolitan Nashville area. It's a great opportunity, and we would love to have anyone be there. It's actually mainly comprised of MNPS students, and yeah, open invitation, more information to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Now, we had a couple of forgotten announcements, so I'm going to go to Dr. Battle, Mrs. Elrod, and Mrs. Player-Peters before we conclude.
Not an announcement, just a clarification. Earlier when we were speaking about nurse vacancies, I want to clarify, there are not 54, there are 31. Okay, so that correct number of nurse vacancies is 31. Every school does have an assigned nurse, but we do have 31 positions still available to fill. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Elrod and Mrs. Player-Peters.
Thank you so much. I forgot to mention, and I really apologize, that MNPS is going to be participating in Nashville Pride this weekend. I really appreciate everyone's internal help on that, whether it's through the support hub or through our individual schools and those leadership groups. I really appreciate MNPS supporting that decision. As you can see, we have flags up, we have shirts. We will be in the parade, and we also have a tent spot. That is probably not the right term, but we have a spot. Also at Pride for both days. Thank you. My gracious. I appreciate it. On Saturday and Sunday, and we will be there to, of course, answer any questions and give supports, and frankly, to show visibility to our students and staff. So I appreciate, once again, MNPS being involved in that. I asked for it, wasn't sure we were going to get it, so I really appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing everybody this weekend.
Mrs. Player-Peters.
In absence of our fellow board member, Dr. Gentry, this Thursday, September 16th, from 6 to 7 p.m., we will have a public meeting regarding the Robert E. Little School. And so I'd just like to let the public know about that. So this Thursday, 6 p.m., 7 p.m. at Robert E. Little Library, 3200 Kings Lane, 37218 for your GPS, and we'll discuss the building from
usage.
Yeah, building usage. There we go. That's it.
All right, so yes, to echo that, we have a lot of different buildings that are vacant right now. So if one is in your area, please just be on the lookout for information on how you can make your voice heard about the future use of that building. We just had one around the future use of Buena Vista, and I'm sure there will be more to come. So yes, reminder about the Lillard conversation on Thursday. I could say so many different things, but Laughlin, Inglewood, Rosebank, that are all in my district, congratulations for your new status. And to my home school, Jones, where my baby attends, congratulations to them. And be there no further business. Oh, Nope, one last thing. The first meeting in October will be canceled because it falls during fall break. So we'll be working with Dr. Battle and her staff to make sure that all contracts or immediate needs of the district are met either before that meeting on October 28th or at the second meeting in October. Be there no further business. This meeting is adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.